across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome. It is the home of Common Sense. Thank you to Julia. Back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. As you've been hearing, Israel now confirming that all 20 remaining hostages believed to be alive have been released. The bodies of those who died are still to be handed over to Israel. Praised as Israel's best friend, Trump declared a new dawn of peace, saying this is the end of an age of terror and the beginning of faith and hope. I mean, straightforward question. Will Donald Trump's peace deal last? We'll come to that in just a couple of moments. Meanwhile, this weekend, tens of thousands marched in London for Palestine to mark 2 years since the war began. Tensions flared as up to 500,000 pro-Palestinian or anti-Israel protesters marched, clashing briefly with counter-protests holding "We Stand with British Jews," Britain's Jews signs. Some of those people found themselves cuffed and arrested. Curious times, huh? And Bridget Phillipson has sparked a backlash after appearing to blame the Crown Prosecution Service for the China spy scandal. The Education Secretary defended Keir Starmer's advisor Jonathan Powell, denying that he played any kind of role in the prosecution. Well, we'll be speaking a little later in the programme to Sir Richard Dearlove, former head of MI6, who might be able to shine a little bit of light, I'm sure, diplomatically speaking. We'll have that and more coming up on the programme. 0344 499 1000. So here's the thing. Will this peace deal last? I mean, this is an incredible moment. It's absolutely historic. There's no doubt about that. The significance is huge and the potential is game-changing. Nobody will run away from all of that. But, of course, there is that slight sense of being here before. We've sort of experienced moments of, well, it's looking good, you know, two-state solutions. Back in the day, various people that turned up, Camp David, and I know there are largely other areas, but I'm talking about peace in the Middle East, generally speaking. You know, it is possible. But we know it's precarious, and that goes with the territory. This is the sort of story that I thought I'd like to sit down with my 11-year-old son tonight and explain a bit of this to him. I won't bore the life out of him with contemporary geopolitical stories, but just to explain, do you know what happened today? This was a big, big day. This was huge. But there is a bit of me that thinks, well, the proof is only really in how long it lasts. We hope it lasts forever. You know, you just want one wayward tentacle of an ideology to go belly up, and you might be back to where you started. Nobody wants to see that. And, you know, to echo the words of Netanyahu this morning, today the Jewish calendar marks the end of 2 years of war. He goes on to pay tribute to fallen Israeli soldiers, mentioning some by name, those killed, those injured. He said, because of these heroes, our nation will survive, thrive, and we will have peace, he said. Obviously, he thanked America in particular for what he called bold decisions made during the 12-day conflict with Iran earlier in the summer. So we know there's definitely a great terrain here for this to look really rather encouraging. But I don't think anybody can be blamed for wondering and having a little bit of a pause before celebrate moment. And I don't know whether celebration is the right thing, but it is huge. I mean, you can't dispute or deny or row back from the absolute significance of what has happened today. Donald Trump came right out with it. He said before he took off from Washington, the war is over. He said it 3 times. The war is over. The war is over. Is that clear enough for you? He told the journalists waiting before he took off. So we know it's absolutely vast what is happening here. We don't dispute that this is clearly the sort of thing we wanted to see rather than what we have seen. But the question is always going to remain, and it's a sad reality because of the area and the history and the backstory and the kind of characters you're dealing with, impenetrable terrorist organisations. That's what's at stake here. Asking people like that to, you know, hold fire not get excited. You only want splinter groups to kind of ruin the whole thing. So the stakes are incredibly high. And whilst I, like anyone else with a brain, welcome every moment of what we've been hearing this morning. By the way, Donald Trump is still speaking. He's still up there. In fact, the first hour of his... How long has he been up there now, Alicia? How long has he been speaking for? Probably just, yeah, I think just over an hour. And the first 90% of that was just him riffing kind of off script. And then he rejoined the auto cue for the speech he was meant to make. So there's some clear dedication to... I know Trump loves a long speech, and he's still up there speaking now. We will bring you, of course, all the salient headlines that come from this incredible moment in Israel's parliament right now. And he's up there, the President of the United States, and of course the hero status and the welcome that he and his family, maybe cheering for his daughter, for goodness sake. Bit weird that, but you take the point. Nonetheless, this is massive. We don't dispute that. Nobody does. It's encouraging. Long may it last. But that's clearly the area where I think we all have a little bit of a foggy moment and think, well, yeah, that's what we're looking for. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. And that question, will Donald Trump's peace deal last? Will it last? I hope it does. I'm sure everybody hopes it does. And our lines are open. 87222. Do you know what? I knew Dave Wooding was coming. I thought Dave was in the studio with us, because he's always in the studio, but Dave's probably in the Bahamas somewhere, Dave. Are you? Dave Wooding, good afternoon to you.
If only in the Bahamas.
Wouldn't that be nice?
It would.
Listen, you've been covering politics for a long, long time, David. You know your way around these stories and the hurdles and that kind of sense of, have we seen all of this before? This feels a bit different. Would that be fair to start off with that? A little bit different. Let's have a reminder of Donald Trump's opening remarks when he spoke to the Senate a little earlier today. Here's what he said.
After so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace, a land and a region that will live, God willing, in peace for all eternity. This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly.
A truly magnificent region. Donald Trump addressing the Knesset earlier in the last hour, Dave, and he's not stopped talking.
No, it was quite a long one then, and it was almost like he was in a pub telling anecdotes. He was cracking gags about how Steve Witkoff went in to negotiate with President Putin. I don't know whether you heard that one, Ian. He went in to negotiate with President Putin, and he was given 20 minutes. After an hour, he was still in. It went on for 4 or 5 hours, and he finally came out, and he was talking about the weather and football and everything else to him, and he was using that anecdote to explain what a great guy he was and how he won over people's confidence and was to help clinch the negotiation deals. But it went on for about 5 minutes, and you wouldn't normally expect somebody to go off piece like that. So he's milking it for all it's worth, obviously. And yeah. I noticed that today the silent people who are not celebrating what is a massive breakthrough, not only after 2 years of war, but after 30 years or more of conflict that we've seen on and off in that region. Yeah. So give credit where it's due to President Trump, but the only people who are quiet are the Trump haters who don't like the smug look on his face and would rather probably the war continue than Trump to win a victory. And the others are the hate marchers who are probably now, as we speak, looking for another reason to take to the streets at the weekend and spew forth their bile against the Jews and Israel.
Yeah, I mean, we had it this weekend, tens of thousands of people spewing onto the streets. And I just find, we found it, well, in fact, it was more than odd, Dave, wasn't it, last week when we had people making, protesting literally after a terror attack on a synagogue, and they were out that very night in that very city and elsewhere. That was just distasteful by anybody's standards. But this is just a bit bizarre when you've got a peace deal. We already had the peace deal, and at the weekend, this sort of very almost growing anti-Israel position from some of these people, carrying the most horrendous placards and flags and almost getting a free pass, it seems. Can't quite work it out, but they're still out there, and I reckon they're going to be out there again next weekend.
They probably will. They probably have no reason to, nothing to live for anymore now. There's peace in the Middle East. But they were out marching on the streets on October the 7th, if you remember, after the atrocities carried out by Hamas. And you'd think it was Israel who had invaded the Palestinian territories and murdered, raped, and tortured 1,400 people rather than the other way around, because at that stage Israel hadn't done anything. Anyway, we have peace now, and I think we should all celebrate that and hope that this is the start of a better period for the Middle East. I can't see why anybody would have any downside on this. You know, the bombardment of Gaza, which the marchers say they were marching for, has now stopped. Yeah. The hostages have been freed. Aid is now pouring in by the lorry load. And you know, we're on the brink of seeing better times for the whole region.
We certainly hope so. And let's just remind ourselves, by the way, we mentioned those protests, 500,000 pro-Palestinian protests marching. They did clash with some counter-protesters who were holding signs saying things like, "We stand with Britain's Jews." But let's have a listen and a reminder of some of the chants that were going on. This was all pretty distasteful stuff, but this took place over the weekend. Here it is.
I don't want to yap for too long, but a chant that we've been workshopping in Oxford that maybe you guys want to join in. It goes, "Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground."
I mean, this guy looks so mad. If it was an animal, you'd put him to sleep, for God's sake, Dave. But this is the kind of pathological, curious level that these bilious people get to.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people who are on that march do try to hide and shield their hatred for Jews and say that they're only marching for one reason, and that is for the relief of Gaza. And deep down, you sense that some of those people do have a hatred. But on the other hand, to come out so blatantly like that and in such a hateful way, if the organisers really were marching for peace, you'd think they'd get hold of this guy and say, "You're not with us, mate. Off you go."
Put the Zios in the ground. I mean,
yeah, it's staggering. It is staggering, and that's one of the awful things that's come out in our country as a result of this conflict is the people who have harboured this hatred of Jewish people. It's just come out. It's out in the open, and it must be quite terrifying if you're a Jewish person living in Britain.
100%. And this is still, I mean, it's always worth saying, fewer than 300,000 Jews in this country. I mean, it's a very small population.
Yeah, there was one guy on there the other day who was saying that one of these interviews I saw on it might have been on talkTV, but it was on one TV channel or another. And he was saying, "Well, what are you protesting about now?" This was after the peace deal had been agreed. And he was saying, "Well, this is all about who runs the world, who is in charge of the world." Wow. And, you know, the clear implication was that he thought Jewish people were in charge of the world, which, of course, is an old Nazi trope.
Yeah. Indeed. We are going to talk more throughout the course of the show on this. We're asking the question, will Donald Trump's peace deal last? We want people's responses as well. Your response to those, what they call laughably pro-Palestinian marches. They're really anti-Jew, anti-Israel. Your response on that. 0344 499 1000. Dave Wooding is with us, Sun columnist, political journalist of many, many years. Let's move to this curious story of China, Dave. Bridget Phillipson sparking a bit of a backlash after appearing to blame the Crown Prosecution Service for the China spy scandal collapse. The Education Secretary defended Keir Starmer's advisor Jonathan Powell, denying he played a role in the dropped prosecution, insisting he retains Keir Starmer's full confidence. Here she is.
What I can say today, to be absolutely clear, is that he was not involved in the substance of the case and discussions around that, or the evidence connected to the case. I can give you that reassurance. He did not have those conversations around the substance or the evidence of the case. These are matters for the relevant authorities, the Crown Prosecution Service, and they date back to 2023.
Well, I mean, it's a foggy one, this, Dave, isn't it? Because I sense, you know, it's only going to be in about 20 years' time when we get those papers that are released. And we look with interest and go, oh, yeah, I remember that. And this might be one of those moments when we do find out how this trial collapsed.
Well, we've had about 4 different answers from the Prime Minister on what actually happened here.
Yeah.
But the stench of corruption is there for all to see and all to smell. It's clear that the government clearly didn't want this trial to go ahead because it would hamper our economic relations with China. I mean, he's given about 4 or 5 different answers to the questions about what happened here. And now Parliament is back. The MPs are all queuing up. I hear Dan Jarvis, the former security minister, is going to make a statement in the Commons this afternoon about 3 o'clock. And there'll be urgent questions being raised by the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch. And so there are a lot of questions to answer here, because if Jonathan Powell, the special envoy, didn't block this trial, then who did? Yeah. And if he did do it, did he tell the Prime Minister? And if he didn't, why didn't he? And if somebody must have made this decision or made this put this forward to the Crown Prosecution Service to that they would not give evidence saying that China was a potential enemy. So either they did or they didn't, and the Prime Minister has to tell us what he knew and who did it.
Yeah, I mean, it really is that simple. I understand Kemi Badenoch and others will be attempting to, well, continue to put pressure on Keir Starmer. The smart money, Dave, and you've seen these stories and how they tend to run and kind of conclude. We don't get any further than where we are today.
No, but it really is. It goes to the very root of our relationships with China, because on the one hand, they're all over our infrastructure here. The Hinkley C nuclear power station in Somerset is one which China has got a 33.5% stake in. It was at one stage, it was Huawei, the tech firm from China, was involved in our 5G system. It was only after protests that stopped. Of course, the influence they've had they've blocked, I think there's about 7 or 8 senior British figures who have been sanctioned by China. 5 of them MPs, 1 a peer, 1 a business person and an academic. And of course, we're accused of kowtowing to China here. If we start calling them an enemy in a trial and get 2 of their spies convicted, what will the sanctions be? And we're just hand in glove with China so much, and this has been going on for years, because under the last government, MPs were warning we're too close to China. We shouldn't be doing a lot of these deals with China. All the spy networks are working with the MI5 and MI6 were warning 2 or 3 years ago that they tried to recruit 20,000 spies in the UK. And their fingers are in every pie here.
Dave, stay with us. Dave Wooding, Sun columnist, political journalist, with us on the programme. More from Dave in a couple of moments. Over to you. There's a couple of questions, and like all of these subjects, such a big subject, and so many kind of tentacles to this one. Will Donald Trump's peace deal last? I mean, explain from your perspective why you sense that this is different to anything we've seen before. I mean, it certainly looks and sounds very different. The significance is vast. The coalition, if you like, of Arab countries that are standing with this one. is a game changer. But of course, Hamas are a terrorist organisation, will continue to be a terrorist organisation. They're not just going to roll over, no matter who is signing the declaration or the deal, etc. Your thoughts on that? Particularly interested as well on the what they call the pro-Palestinian protests at the weekend. What do you make of that? I know some sort of people on what you might say the counter-protest did get arrested for holding a sign saying "We stand with Britain's Jews." I find that incredibly almost beyond disturbing. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
It's not merely Israel and Hamas, but many other sides that had to be brought in, such as the supporters of Hamas and others like that, to get to this point where finally the one thing that we always knew would end the conflict in sort of a military sense, i.e. the return of the hostages, has happened. So, you're right to say we don't know quite how it's going to unfold from here, but for this particular part, he said from day one the hostages are all coming back, all of them are coming back, and he's got them back, and it was he and his administration who've made the difference.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 1. Dave Wooding is with us from The Sun. Loads to talk about, Dave. Let's move on then to this story. It is Rachel Reeves with the possibility of imposing a one-off wealth tax on the budget next month. I mean, they pretty much kept the budget back until almost flipping Christmas Day by the looks of things. I'm surprised they didn't go there. But nonetheless, it's pushed into November. A one-off wealth tax is seen as easier to deal with. Because it doesn't give anyone a chance to kind of leg it and live somewhere else or change their tax arrangements. It apparently gets you by surprise. Do you think this is... I mean, I sense something like this is coming.
Well, the only thing we can predict with any guarantee of it being correct is that there's going to be one big clobbering for some of us in the budget in 6 weeks' time. And the question is whether it will be by wealth or by stealth. We're either going to get wealth taxes or stealth taxes. That's the truth, because she's vowed she isn't going to make any cuts. In fact, we're already told that the budget, Bridget Phillipson let slip yesterday that the budget is going to go up for welfare, which should be being cut by anybody's standards, in order to pay for lifting the two-child cap on benefits for families. So that's going to go up. So we're going to pay more tax. And one suggestion of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the think tank, is that she'll do a one-off wealth tax. It's also being mooted elsewhere that she may in fact go for some stealth taxes, you know, the ones that you lowering thresholds or doing things like that, because of course she's boxed herself in by saying there will be no tax rises for working families, no income tax rises, no VAT rises. So she's either going to break her election promises or she's going to hit us with wealth tax or a stealth tax. It's anybody's guess what she'll do.
I think, Dave, is she going to do that thing of redefining what is a working person, though? Because they seem to like that. They didn't recognise landlords. It was Angela Rayner, you might remember her. I don't think that she said something about landlords aren't really working people. And then, of course, we had the the employers' national insurance hike, which went into affect lots of small businesses, which are run by, often single-handed. They are working people, so they collar the rise there. If you sort of redefine what you think or treat as a working person, that, in her world, she will see wiggle room there.
Yes, and in fact, Keir Starmer already went some way towards doing that several months ago when asked what a working person was. If my memory's right, he said it's somebody who's struggling to pay the bills, who doesn't have very much money to pay for a sudden bill that came in, just about enough to get by. Well, that's not all working people. No. That means that anybody who's earning a living and has got a mortgage and a few bob in the bank is going to be hit.
And this one to finish on, Dave. New EU border checks could cause 4-hour waits and cost the UK economy 400 million quid, according to the industry. This is the new EU entry-exit system, which has got this kind of new biometric check for non-EU travellers entering the Schengen area. So it replaces sort of passport stamps, as it were. And apparently it could hit us right between the proverbials, Dave.
Yeah, well, all these little resets we've had with the European Union that Keir Starmer has engineered all seems to be one-way traffic. And it looks to me like it's another bit of a Brexit punishment beating. Yeah. It's a shame they can't have these sort of checks on people who are illegally leaving France to enter Britain on small boats. Perhaps we should have some checks at the border there for them as well.
That would make sense, wouldn't it? I don't think it's too much to ask, really, to wonder at least who is coming into our country on a daily mass of about 1,000 a day when the sun shines. Fair point. David, thank you as ever. Dave Wooding, he is, of course, Sun columnist and political journalist of donkey's years around the Westminster block, as it were. Thoughts on anything Dave had to say there as well? 0344 499 1000. Some really interesting guests coming up. Your views, of course, are absolutely crucial. We'll talk to the former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem in just a moment, and a former IDF spokesman as well. Details coming next. 1:30. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, just gone 1:30. So, as you've been hearing, historic day. Israel has now confirmed that all 20 remaining hostages, believed to be alive, have now been released. But the bodies of those who died are still to be handed over to Israel. There's a lot of controversy around that. We'll come to all of that. Donald Trump hailing as a colossus in Israel's Knesset today, receiving a standing ovation for his role in brokering the ceasefire and the hostage deal. Praised as Israel's best friend, Trump declared a new dawn of peace. He said, "This is the end of an age of terror and the beginning of faith and hope." Let's have a listen to what the American president said.
After so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace, a land and a region that will live, God willing, in peace for all eternity. This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly.
It was Churchillian, I think you could reasonably say, in his delivery and what he had to say there. Of course, the bigger question, which we're in a holding position, I guess, is how will this look in a year down the line and beyond? Let's speak firstly to Fleur Hassan Nahum, Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy and former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Fleur, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. Your response, I mean, there's no other way of dressing this up. This is hugely significant, an incredible moment to see this. You know, 6 months ago, we couldn't have imagined we'd be quite here in this this collaborative way that has been carved out. Your response to, firstly, Mr. Trump's speech just an hour or so ago.
Well, I mean, he said some very Churchillian things about peace in the region, about bringing peace to Israel. He has a lot of credit in doing what he did. Nobody would have thought that Hamas would have given up every last living hostage. Nobody could have seen this, because that was the leverage this genocidal terrorist group had. The hostages, because they know that we care about each one of our citizens. So he came here and he gave this incredible speech. And then I'm not sure you saw the whole speech, but he riffed quite a lot. Yeah. He's very entertaining. He's very funny. But ultimately, what he has shown is that he's a true friend of Israel. He's a true friend of civilization and the free world. He understands that the enemy of the free world is the same enemy that Israel has, which is Islamic fundamentalism, which is the forces of evil and destruction. And he has managed to bring forth the Sunni moderate Arab countries, the countries that actually understand that they want peace and prosperity and not death, cult, and destruction. He's managed to bring them in. He did this 5 years ago with the Abraham Accords, and now he's extending that circle of countries in the region that want peace and prosperity, and basically said to them, look, you can choose the path of destruction, of supporting Hamas, of supporting jihadi terrorism, or you could choose prosperity with the United States as an important ally. To me, this is exactly what he said to Qatar and exactly what he said to Turkey, because these two countries are playing both games. They are basically the countries that are for the Muslim Brotherhood at the moment. And I really think that quite brilliantly, Trump has given them this choice. Which path do you want to take? And that's why we got to this moment.
But of course, Fleur, and this won't be lost on you or anybody else, really, we have to... There's a little bit of keeping our fingers crossed. We've been in many positions over the last 20, 30 years and beyond where, it's looking as if there might be some kind of deal, whatever solution people prefer. It could well be that we're ahead, oh no, and then it's gone again. There are some obvious figures lurking in the wings that could probably if the truth be known, right now would willingly tear down this deal, and there'll be people within Hamas that would feel that way. At the moment, they are endorsing everything. We have Iran, of course, which will forever be that backdrop to all matters nefarious in the Middle East, I guess. What is your hope for that? And is hope the only thing we can cling on to here?
That's a great question. You know, I moved to Israel 24 years ago when I thought we were on the cusp of peace with Arafat, and look how that turned out. Israel has offered the Palestinians a state 5 times, and they've been much more invested in the destruction of the state of Israel than they've ever been invested in building anything for themselves. And that really is the crux of the conflict. But what Trump is doing or saying is actually very smart. What he's saying to them is, look, Israel's a fact. You're not going to get rid of Israel. We're behind Israel. We're not going to let you get rid of Israel. So then you only have one pathway forward. And that is some type of reconciliation, normalization with the state of Israel, because that's how you're going to get America. That's a huge shift. I'm not sure there's been any president who's been so resolute and so deliberate about going to the Arab world and saying, pick your side. This is the side of the United States. Now, am I being overly optimistic? Maybe, because we got our hostages back and I want to believe in hope. I've got 4 children in this country. I've got children in the army in this country. Every single mother in this country wants peace. Nobody wants our children to trot off to war and risk their lives. And, you know, and the price that we've been willing to pay for peace has been astronomical, Ian. 200 terrorists with blood on their hands have been released today, murdered hundreds of people. Do you know how the families of the victims feel today? This is a mixed day of emotions. Yes, we're so happy to have our hostages home. B, we don't have all the hostages, but the dead ones still haven't been brought home for a dignified funeral. But also we've had to release 200 murderers with blood on their hands. This is the price that Israel has always been willing to pay for peace. And yes, I am cautiously optimistic, but I think the thing about Trump is he doesn't fool around. And he speaks their language, not literally, but he speaks the language of peace through strength, not peace through appeasement and capitulation, which has been the last decades of diplomacy around the world with the Arab world. He says no, he puts a gun on the table and he said, you take it or leave it. But this is what I have to offer you. Maybe this will make the difference. I pray.
It's interesting. I mentioned detractors, those who won't be so enamoured with this, Fleur. You don't have to look in some dark alleyway in the middle of Gaza to find a group that have a very different view. You just have to look to London in the UK to see 500,000 people protesting. They call them pro-Palestinian protests. They're not. They're anti-Jew. They're anti-Israel.
Yes.
They always have been.
Yes.
And they were out this weekend. What does it take for these people to shut up?
Well, the destruction of Israel. You see, that's what these people want. They say they want to free Palestine. What does free Palestine mean to them when they say from the river to the sea? That is a chant for the destruction of the state of Israel, whether they know it or don't. Where are we supposed to go? This is our ancestral homeland. We were willing, always to share it. But they were not willing. They didn't want to compromise. And ultimately, this is what we've seen unleashed. But Ian, as you well know, this is not just a threat to Israel. These people are also saying death to Britain, death to America, death to the West, death to the free world. These are extremist jihadis and the useful idiots who are going along thinking that somehow they want a new communist world order where their lives are going to be better. They have no idea what they're talking about. But what's very interesting about Trump's speech, I think, that he also gave a message to Iran. To Iran, look, you want to talk? We're still willing to talk. But you have to stop sponsoring terror, and you have to, go on the side of peace and prosperity. You can't continue to build a nuclear weapon and say death to America. So Trump is willing to make peace with everybody that are willing to make peace with America, Israel, and the free world. There is a choice here. These countries have always had a choice, and Trump is making it crystal clear.
Yeah. And just a final point, we'll have to be brief, Fleur. There is some concern over hostages that didn't survive and have still not been returned. We know that all living Israeli hostages have now been handed over, but there are 28 others believed to be dead. Not all of those bodies have been returned. Some of the families are saying that is a breach of this agreement already.
It is. It's a breach of the agreement because the agreement was that Israel will retreat if the 48 hostages, 20 alive and 28 dead, are returned for a dignified funeral. Now, they themselves have said, look, we don't know whether we can locate all of them, but they have located, from what I understand, at least half of them, and those families deserve their bodies back. And the rest of them, we pray that they do locate those bodies, because those families need closure. And let me tell you, today is a happy day. Today is a joyous day. It's going to be a very, very sad, depressing day when those coffins start coming back.
Absolutely. Fleur, lovely to have you on with us. Great to speak. Thank you, Fleur Hassan Nahum, Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy, also former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Let's get a word from Ophir Dayan, who is former IDF spokesperson, field officer. Ophir, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
I mean, this is an incredible day. Nobody is going to, suggest otherwise. But of course, the key is that every day looks like this for many years to come.
Yeah, look, I think really the fine print is what is going to determine if this agreement is successful or not. On the face of it, Israel in this agreement got everything it needed to guarantee its security and safety. We got Hamas demilitarizing, we got Hamas not being a part of the future governance of Gaza. So what is left to see is if Hamas will really stick to the agreement. And we already see, as you mentioned to Flair, that Hamas is not meeting the terms of the agreement that stipulated Hamas has to return the 28 bodies of the deceased hostages, the murdered hostages, to Israel. I highly doubt that Hamas only knows where 4 of them are.
Well, that seems to be the reasoning, doesn't it? That they have lost these people somehow, which just sounds tragic even saying that out loud.
Right. But unfortunately for Hamas, unfortunately for Israel, although it wasn't apparent on October 7th, 2023, Israel has a very good intelligence community. And I'm sure that we can catch the bluff if Hamas is bluffing in this case, and if Hamas actually knows where the bodies are, when the bodies are, and they're just trying to hide them.
How confident are you? You know how the IDF operate. In terms of, could an IDF soldier tomorrow just walk down the middle of a busy area of Gaza and feel safe? I mean, are we in that territory?
I don't think we're in this territory. I don't think we ever were in this territory. And I don't think the IDF is aspiring to be in this territory per the agreement that was signed. Per the agreement, we are to withdraw to an agreed ceasefire line and then keep withdrawing as the agreement goes forward. I think our wish is not to continue to police the Gazans or anyone in the Gaza Strip. Our hope is that the international community lives up to the agreement, establishes this board of peace that Trump was admiring in his speech just an hour ago, and have a functioning technocratic government in Gaza that can ensure that Hamas does not stay in power, that Hamas hands its weapons to an agreed partner, and make sure that Israel doesn't need to send soldiers to roam around Gaza City, Khan Yunis, or anywhere else.
It's an incredible coalition of countries that have got together on this. But I'm still left with that rattling feeling. You can get the Saudis, the Qataris, you can get the Egyptians, obviously, on board for all of this. But ultimately, it's up against a terrorist organisation, an organisation that play by very different rules. We've seen it in the past.
If any rules at all.
If any rules at all, indeed.
We can dispute any rules at all for an organization that just yesterday was revealed, a handwritten note by Yahya Sinwar, the former leader of Hamas, calling to stomp on the heads of the dead soldiers and kill all the Jewish babies. I don't think they play by any rules, or at least any rules known to civilized mankind.
But that gives us an insight, does it not, as to how precarious a deal like this is. And no one is suggesting otherwise, in fairness. Even Mr. Trump, Netanyahu, they know that. But it does, when you consider the ideology or whatever the hell is going on in the minds of Hamas people, it could take one event, one person to destabilise this.
Exactly. And that's why the summit in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt is so important, because at this moment, the problem of Hamas in Gaza turns from an Israeli problem to a worldwide problem, because the world needs to understand that radical fundamentalism and Islamic extremism is not solely the problem of Israel. And I think the world understood that for a brief period of time when ISIS was gaining traction all around the world, but they need to relearn it, maybe. That Hamas is an ideology, as you said. It's not only the problem of Israel, it's a problem of all civilized nations. And so I think this summit is super important. So these countries, European, Arab, Muslim, can reaffirm their commitment to fight extremism and be on Israel's side while making sure that Hamas is not staying in Gaza.
And we know,
or anywhere else.
Indeed, and you will know, Afia, only a week or so ago we had a terror attack in this country on a synagogue. We know that there are people with that mindset. I mentioned to Fleur these extraordinary protests that still go on almost unhindered in this country on a weekly basis for people who have a pathological hatred of Jews and Israel, which is ultimately what it's about. You've only got to look at the flags they're waving. I mean, who walks around London in the 21st century with an ISIS flag, for goodness sake? That's the territory we're in. So there are
brainwashed individuals.
Indeed, there's a lot of anti-Israel sentiment out there, and that's also part of the battle here.
Exactly, but I think first of all, I want to send my condolences from here to the families of those murdered in the horrible terror attack in your country. And as we say in Israel, everything that happens to the Jewish community all over the world is an internal affair, not an external affair in Israel. So obviously we hurt deeply by this terror attack. But I want to appeal to those protesters and maybe try to get into their minds, because when they, in the name of liberalism, in the name of progressivism, in the name of social justice, march with flags honoring terror organizations on the second anniversary of a day when those exact terror organizations slaughtered entire families in their beds, what are they advocating for? They're advocating for the extreme opposite of everything that is liberal, that is moral, that is just. They're protesting in favor of murdering people just because they're Jewish in their beds, in a music festival, or anywhere else that you can find them. And this is, to me, extremely appalling. And I really hope that the British government, as well as the American government and Australian government and all over the world, put an end to this dangerous phenomena, because protest is obviously okay under the freedom of speech and freedom of expression, which I fully support. But I think those protesters holding ISIS sign in the middle of London is a line crossed that shouldn't be allowed in a nation that wants to keep living.
100%. Afia, lovely to have you with us. Thank you for your time. We will speak again. Afia Dayan, who is a former IDF spokesperson, field officer. Thank you to her. Thank you to Fleur as well. 0344 499 1000. There's a lot to get into that. I think the last point that she made there about crossing a line, it's like, who are these people? Why are these people? You know, what do you protect? It's just beyond words as to when you look at those protests, not just the ones this weekend, particularly the ones after Manchester that happened literally hours later in the same city. I mean, what kind of mentality constructs and organises that and thinks that's kind of okay? We're the UK, by the way. We're not some medieval backwater. It's just extraordinary. And it sort of does go beyond freedom of speech, as it were. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
definitely be enough.
Everywhere, people are taking to the streets and they're so relieved and happy to see their brothers brought back home from Hamas captivity. So there's lots of hope. The realists in the crowd know that this currently is a ceasefire and it is not a peace deal. If Hamas indeed implements all of President Trump's plan, there's a chance that it becomes a peace deal. But currently it's a ceasefire and a hostage release, which in itself is marvelous.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Deb in Devon says, Ian, these protesters are nothing more than vile racists. We have laws against this, and it should be enforced, as it would be against anyone else picking on another ethnic group and calling for their death. What next? That's a very good point. I mean, what's interesting about that view is I would have thought, from Deb's comments, that anyone knew that. Anyone could come to the same conclusion. I don't think there's any other view, is there? That's it. And yet, every week we have seen those protests with the signs and with everything that goes with it. And it seems very little is done about it. And even after Manchester, we had politicians saying, could you please not protest? Would you mind awfully not do it? Please? Please, really? Whip out the water cannon, Shabana. Come on, get them out there, girl. Get these people off the street. This is the UK, for goodness sake. Brian is in Brighton. Brian, what have you got for us?
Hello, Ian.
Good afternoon to you, Brian. What are your thoughts? Thank you.
Yeah, so I listened to the Trump speech, and at the beginning, I thought he was incredibly statement tight. I thought his delivery was almost impeccable.
Yeah.
And then obviously he went off script and he went into his typical Trump mode, and I did find myself laughing a few times. He's obviously promoting a few people along the way.
Yeah.
But we all know what Trump's like, and that's just his statesman style.
True.
But I think ultimately there's a big flaw in the plan, and that flaw isn't going to be helped. There's all different types of variables, obviously there is, but the flaw, the plan, the ultimate plan and the aim for the Middle East is not going to be helped. There's going to be continuous hindrance from weak states, weak politicians who may say one thing and then completely undermine the entire effort by being spineless. And we all know the culprits, because we have one in unfortunately, the leader of our country. As far as I'm concerned, this individual says one thing and does the complete opposite. We already have, it goes beyond the usual politics and politicking of smoke and mirrors. We only have to look at what he said in regards to, a Palestinian Authority. Why on earth did he say that?
Yeah.
And the unfortunate truth is that we are living in a country which...
It was an utterly bizarre... I mean, I know the UK are not alone in that. France, Australia and dozens of others are also recognising Palestine, etc., or going forward they will. No one's ever been able to explain to me, Brian, the timing of that. I mean, what was the necessity to do that then? Did they think it would help today? I don't know.
Well, I think, ultimately, I don't know. I'm not a politician. I'm just reading...
Yeah, no, I agree. And I feel the same as you. It's a head-scratcher, and I've no idea what... And neither has Starmer really explained in any sort of digestible detail what the purpose of that was. Listen, Brian, I have to move for no other reason. I want to get another voice on before the news. Thank you to you, Brian. Great call, Brian in Brighton. Matt's in Cheshire. What do you got for us, Matt? Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Ian. The Democrats and the Labour Party will do everything they can using their paid agitators to try and undermine the agreement. Obviously, they won't be able to make any difference on the ground, but their whole purpose will be to destroy this, because it will be part of probably the biggest part of Trump's legacy. And we now know, because of this government, that the Labour Party have nothing at all without protest and contrarianism.
That's a good point.
They exist for that reason alone.
100%.
14 years in opposition, and you could fit their entire book of ideas on the back of a stamp.
Yeah.
So without basically slagging other people off constantly, they've got absolutely nothing.
Do you sense, I mean, certainly if you look at the kind of backstories of some of our front benchers, I think there's a few faces on there that would be fuming after today in terms of what we saw.
Of course. I mean,
they would hate it. They'd hate the whole Trump thing. They hate that whole connection.
Well, they'll pretend to be statesman-like now. Well, they've got the ministerial car and the wardrobe and the five-star sort of dining experience. As soon as they get back on the back benches again, they'll turn back into John McDonnell again. You know, that's all these people are. They're just still the Corbynites in Blair's clothing.
Corbynites in Blair's clothing. It's very hard to not conclude that, Matt, because I think we've had a kind of deluge of evidence that suggests precisely that's where we're at. Matt, thank you. Matt in Cheshire. One here, afternoon, Ian. Are we actually living in a clown world? We have hate crime laws which appear to be enforced on a regular basis by our police. Yes, we did. That's all I've got on that text. Some of these, maybe there was more to it, but it's true. I think the point being made there is that people having their doors smashed in because of what they said on Twitter, but you can happily walk in broad daylight with kind of doom and death threat kind of wording written on placards and coming out your mouth at a protest in the capital city. That seems a bit weird, doesn't it? Our lines are open. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. Will Trump's peace deal last? Let's get the news headlines at 2.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back to the home of common sense. We've got loads to get through here. We are, of course, talking about that peace deal, the big moment. Trump there in Israel addressing the Israeli parliament. Israel confirming all 20 hostages, the ones believed to be alive, have now been released. But the bodies of those who died are still to be handed over to Israel. That's certainly a bit of a difficult moment in terms of what this peace agreement was meant to be. Mr. Trump praised as Israel's best friend. He declared a new dawn of peace, saying this is the end of an age of terror and the beginning of faith and hope. These were Churchillian kind of phrases. But do you concur? Can it last? Thoughts on that? And also thoughts on this. We've talked about this quite a bit in the last hour. The tens of thousands marching in London for Palestine to mark 2 years since the war began. Tensions flared as up to 500,000 pro-Palestinian protesters marched, clashing briefly with counter-protesters who were holding signs that simply said, "We stand with Britain's Jews." And I don't know at what point anyone would see that as offensive, alarming, distressing in any shape or form. And of course it comes 5 minutes after a terrorist attack on a synagogue. Thoughts on that as well. And Bridget Phillipson has sparked a backlash after appearing to blame the Crown Prosecution Service for the China spy scandal. The Education Secretary defended Keir Starmer's advisor Jonathan Powell, denying he played any role in the dropped prosecution. We'll speak with Sir Richard Dearlove in this hour. He's the former head of MI6, knows a thing or two about espionage and relationships with China. We'll get his take on recent events. And, of course, over to you as well, 0344 499 1000. This one from Andy. The war in the Middle East may have stopped. My concern is the streets of Great Britain. If Starmer does do something, there'll be wars here too. It will kind of become increasingly profound if we have more hassle on the streets of the UK than on the streets of Gaza. I mean, wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that kind of show you how far we have fallen in the name of common sense, respect and decency? So part of the story, what some people see as the missing part of the story, are the hostages that didn't survive October 7th, would have been killed, murdered by Hamas. Where are those bodies? We do know that Israel have confirmed that all 20 remaining hostages that are alive have now been handed over. But what about the dead in this? Many saying this is clearly a breach of the agreement. I'm not sure that's how the protocol advises that scenario. They would have known before that perhaps not all of those dead are even locatable. But we will watch and see how the next 24 hours pans out. Meantime, Donald Trump was hailed as a colossus in Israel's Knesset today, receiving a standing ovation for his role in brokering the ceasefire and the hostage deal. Praised as Israel's best friend, Trump declared a new dawn of peace, saying this is the end of an age of terror and the beginning of faith and hope. Let's have a listen to what the US president had to say.
After so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace, a land and a region that will live, God willing, in peace for all eternity. This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly.
Let's get a word on this with Major Dan Pfefferman, National Security Analyst and Intelligence Officer. Dan, good afternoon to you. I mean, when you look back at Middle East peace moments, we've seen many, Camp David, the White House lawn, we've seen what happened in Egypt a few years ago. I mean, we have sort of been in this territory before. This is bigger. It seems incredibly significant, but of course, what happens today is one thing. What happens tomorrow is quite another. Good afternoon to you.
Yeah, good afternoon. Look, I mean, there's really, two things that are being done today. One is maybe less grandiose, but no less important. The other one is this potential. We need to add that word potential for what Trump is talking about peace in the region. So first, the specific war, this round of fighting that began 2 years ago by Hamas with its October 7th invasion is over, and Hamas agreed to more or less to the terms that Trump set out, that Israel was willing to accede to, and that the hostages were released first and not in some kind of psychological torture trickle as they are prone to do with us. So this specific round of fighting is over. Now comes the next part. And the tricky part is I haven't seen any public indications. There are now rumors coming out, there are leaks coming out of Washington that Hamas has actually accepted the 21-point Trump plan, which include two huge things. Hamas will not play a role in any future politics or governance of Gaza, and Hamas has to be disarmed. The important thing, however, that we didn't have with previous peace attempts in the region is that most of the region actually agrees to this. Most of the region is aligned behind the Trump plan. Israel agrees to it. And so the key is going to be in the implementation. And if American leadership here can galvanize the region to actually stand behind the plan, because the plan itself is quite a good one.
I keep coming back that the word Iran is rattling around in my head like Billy-O at the moment, Dan.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I know it's not a position I like to wake up with usually, but we consider the Qataris, the Saudis, and the Egyptians. We know that there is common agreement there around what has happened. We look at the loose cannon that is Hamas. Of course, that's always going to be the area where who knows just what one facet of that organisation might do. But Iran is been this perpetual backdrop when it comes to Israel. Can we trust them?
No, but you can keep them in check, and you can keep pressure on them, and you can keep sanctions on them, and you can keep military pressure on them, and you can use every avenue of lawfare and economic warfare and diplomacy and sanctions and the specter of military force. You don't even actually have to use military force because they are quite weak militarily, and they do back down when confronted, as we saw just this past June. And so the radical axis is nicknamed that, and it's led by Iran because it is radical. It doesn't have the same calculations, the same rationale as do Western countries or as do the moderate modern states of the Middle East, which is today, led by the Saudis, led by the Gulf states, the UAE, etc. And so you don't need to trust their intentions at all. You can't, but you can use all the levers of power that you have in order to keep them in check and to force compliance with good behavior.
What is your take, Dan, on this, the issue of those that are yet to be returned, Israelis that didn't survive? The number, of course, is, we understand, 28. But there is a suggestion that all 28 are not accounted for in the sense of being able to return their remains. I mean, this is, as some families have correctly pointed out, this is pivotal to the deal because, of course, this technically breaches the deal. I would assume there's something baked into this agreement that would address this. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I believe there is, and I believe there are different kind of clauses and efforts for when Hamas ultimately doesn't abide by its agreements. Hamas, by the way, also was insisted on receiving guarantees from Washington that Israel would hold by its parts of the agreements here. The first and most urgent part was to get the living hostages back, who are an immense amount of suffering, kept in starvation, in tunnels deep underground, without sunlight, oftentimes unallowed to speak or move for the last 2 years, and threatened with death and violence and torture literally every day. It's quite clear that the families of those 28 deceased are waiting for the remains of their loved ones. In Jewish tradition, proper burial is a key part, just as it is in many religions and many cultures. And these families need closure. And so from what I've understood since the beginning, Hamas might not know actually where all of these remains are. And they might also be using it in order to get something out of it. I haven't seen that they're trying to squirm out of the agreement yet. My sense is that they possibly don't know where all these remains lie.
Final point, Dan, what is your political gut telling you in terms of where we will be a year from now?
You know, thankfully, my political gut, unlike yours, doesn't talk to me about Iran. But what I'm hoping to see here is the Trump plan actually be fulfilled, at least in most parts. And so what we need to see here, and this is something very important with this plan, is that it brings together most of the region and the international community behind one key vision that Israel signed onto, and that is disarm Hamas, remove it from power. And in order to rebuild Gaza, you have to de-radicalize Palestinian society. Palestinian society is not just Hamas. It is, by and large, wholly radicalized to continue rejecting Israel, fighting against Israel, producing terrorists, generations after generations of terrorists. And we need Palestinian society as a whole to come to the conclusion that its future lies in building itself and living alongside Israel. And so if we can get positive momentum out of this, if we can get Trump to bring in more countries into the Abraham Accords 2.0, that'll be huge. Yeah. We might see some positive developments on the Syria front. Saudi Arabia and Israel ties will continue to go stronger. There's talks of Indonesia. And so I think that there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of hope, but we're going to have to remain vigilant, and we're going to have to remain united as the civilized world. And going back to the story that was right before you brought me on air, I am concerned for the streets of the UK and of the West in general in the radicalization that has been taking place. And this war was just an excuse for that radicalization. And you're going to have some serious challenges on your end.
Indeed. We also have 50,000 people a year float across the channel on rubber boats, and we've got no idea who the hell they are. So there's another element to this. Dan, it's a confused world, but there is hope today. And thank you for joining us. He is Major Dan Pfefferman, National Security Analyst and Intelligence Officer. Let's get a word from you. Julie is in Stockton-on-Tees. What are you making of all of this, Julie? Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Ian. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So that guy, Dan, was it?
That we've just spoken to, yeah.
Yeah, he just stole my thunder. It's exactly what I was going to say as well. I think it's quite obvious that this is a commercial deal that Trump and Witkoff and Jared, his son-in-law, has done. And I think that they have paid off Hamas, if I'm allowed to say that, because why would they just agree to this so quickly? But one of the other things that kind of comes to mind, and I know you don't like conspiracy theories, but, you know, with this Steve Witkoff messaging about the UK saying that they were a part of it, and what Bridget Phillipson said yesterday, and of course we know the stars over there now, could this be another part of the 4D chess that Trump is playing? Because he did say something this morning in his speech about, he told Bibi that the time was now. It's now time to give up. He's won the war, so to speak. Could it be because of the recognition of Palestine by some of the states that he's actually been able to go to him and say, look, you're losing the will of the other states, and now you need to back down and strike a deal? You think that's possible?
It could be. I tell you what I thought was interesting, Julie, is that Witkoff didn't mention, because obviously this story went around, the American, Mike Huckabee, the US ambassador to Israel, had said that, you know, essentially there was no key role played. It was delusional, I think he said. And then Witkoff comes along and said, actually, there was a vital role, they were his words, that the UK played. He said, I'd like to acknowledge the vital role the UK played in assisting and coordinating efforts to have led us to this historic day. He said, in particular, I want to recognise the incredible input and tireless efforts of National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell. Now, he didn't mention Starmer there, Julie. He didn't even mention the government.
I don't think he's going to mention Starmer because... you know, he could, well, depending on how you look at it, if Starmer did it because he's scared of the Muslim vote and what's going to go on in the UK, that's why he didn't mention Starmer. But if it's part of the 4D chess thing, then that would also be why he didn't mention Starmer, because he wouldn't want to make out that they'd only done this just to, you know, turn Netanyahu's hand, you know. very interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting, and I wonder if it's meant to be this foggy in some way. Julie, what we're trying to do is make sense of, you know, I don't know, geopolitical, international agreements and conversations. And, you know, I read someone say, actually, France and the UK and Australia recognising the Palestinian state was actually pivotal to getting Hamas to go, OK, it looks like we've got a future. I don't know about that, but these are the kind of stories we're hearing. Julie, thank you for your call, though. You've been brilliant. Thank you. 0344 499 1000. More from you on the way. This is Talk.
Everywhere, people are taking to the streets, and they're so relieved and happy to see their brothers brought back home from Hamas captivity. So there's lots of hope. The realists in the crowd know that this currently is a ceasefire and it is not a peace deal. If Hamas indeed implements all of President Trump's plan, there's a chance that it becomes a peace deal. But currently it's a ceasefire and a hostage release, which in itself is marvelous.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
2:20. David in the Cotswolds says, Ian, seriously, I think Donald Trump needs to give his head a wobble. Hamas accepted 7 of the 21 points, choosing to reject or ignore 13 of them, including no role in technocratic governance, demilitarization and international oversight. Hamas did accept a ceasefire, the withdrawal of the IDF, aid and a hostage prisoner exchange, only things that benefit Hamas. They will be back once they've rearmed and recruited, says David in the Cotswolds. And that's kind of where my head has been a little bit on this. And I don't say that with any immense Middle Eastern knowledge, but just looking at the terrain, the past, history, terror organisations, what they tend to do, how they kind of act, the idea that we can go, hey, we're home and dry now, let's get out the Prosecco, because this is a fabulous day. And, of course, it's a day, it will be seen as progress. We weren't here yesterday or the week before. We all get that, but the measure of this is not where we are today. It's where we are in 1 year's time, 2, 3, 4, and beyond years' time. Ian is down in London. Ian, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian. Me again.
Nice to have you with us.
I'll tell you, one thing, or two things. One is frightening. On Saturday evening, I went up with my partner to Covent Garden.
Yeah.
This must have been about 6:30. And as I'm walking along from Drury Lane into Covent Garden, there's a sort of family of sort of ordinary sort of white English people with a little girl of about 6-7 years old on her daddy's shoulders, right, waving a Palestinian flag. Now, you could see there was nobody with them that would be sort of like thing, and it just sort of worries me how deep the anti-Semitism goes. Now, this is like, to anybody else of the same mind, like you would say, they've got a peace plan going. They've got a ceasefire. For how long? Yes, as you say, it will carry on is a different story. But you'd have thought that it's sort of thought, no. And to have a little girl who was in like a party dress,
waving a Palestinian. Yeah, it's a bit kind of strange, isn't it? That I don't know where this hatred of our own allies, Western democracies, elected governments, or a country run by terrorists. Let's wave a flag of that one rather than the ones that are our allies and have been our friends forever.
Yeah.
It's just a bit weird, isn't it? How somebody draws that conclusion, why they choose to have the very opposite view to what you might think common sense, decency and respect would dictate.
But the second bit, which is even more frightening, all you get from Zara Sultana and that the union guy that was on last week at the end of the week, like extremists, blah, 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 and far right, they're extremists and everything. Wait a minute, hold on a minute. I've never yet heard, and I'm not far right, far from it, right? I've never heard people going on these far right, kill the Muslims, kill the blacks, kill the ginger-haired people, kill the blue-eyed people, right? But every time you see these Palestinian marches, that's all you hear.
Oh, it's an overt anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish march. I mean, it really is. I know you always have to put the caveat. Of course, there's going to be one or two old duffers there, usually old women, really. I always have an image, live at home with lots of cats, but nonetheless, another story. There's who attend these things, and I'm sure they have only, peace in their sort of John Lennon-esque kind of minds. But broadly speaking, the loud, the vocal, the people giving the speeches are horrendous characters. I've no idea why they're in my country, but they are.
But I want to know...
Well, usually because they're British, that's probably why.
But which one is what they call fascist? Because what I was told...
No, I agree, yeah.
...was like far right, but this is supposed to be the left.
This is supposed to be the left.
Is this now...
These are the caring people, right?
Yeah. The caring people are the fascists?
Yeah.
I just don't understand it.
I don't know. As I said to Julie, our last call, I'm not sure we're meant to understand it all. I mean, it is bonkers. But I find that the Palestinian protest thing just sort of it's infuriating at its very best. It's infuriating. But on a more basic, honest level, I think, Ian, it is horrific. Frankly, genuinely horrific to see this on our streets. Thank you, Ian. Lovely to speak again. Good to have you with us. Andrew's in Hertfordshire. What have you got for us, Andrew? Good afternoon to you.
Yeah, no one challenges those people, do they? So if you think about it, at school, their views aren't challenged at the local point of prayer. And in the world of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and that's the problem, isn't it? Nobody's challenged them. Yeah. The police do a great job. But they cannot, once you get to a certain size, they can't do anything. And they've worked it out. So 10 people do something, it takes 200 policemen to arrest them. 50,000, they can do what they like. We'll take some pictures, we'll come and see you early in the morning. That's the best they can do.
Yeah.
And that's the facts. We can all, it's not the what. We all know the what. It's the how you overcome it. And the how, there just isn't enough Metropolitan Police. There just isn't. In relation to the plan, it's a great plan, 20 points. He didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. There's next year.
I think he's likely to get it next year, isn't he? I mean, I would have thought.
I don't know. Either way, that's what he's aiming for. They signed it. It's 20 points. Yeah. They've given the hostages back. The Israeli IDF is resting. He's saying to them, what do you need? They're saying these are the things. It'll stimulate his economy to supply them because they'll technically buy them, drive economy, and then Hamas will not comply, like the IRA and the real IRA, and then they'll go get them. That's what's going to happen, because they cannot lay down their weapons.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? It's not only are they linked to the obvious hatred of Israel, but they believe they have God on their side, Andrew. And so you're forever, as far as they're concerned, they're punching up. You know, they're the good guys, they're the blessed guys, etc. But it's no what they're doing is, you know, spiritually endorsed by their version of God.
Yeah.
How do you argue?
Right. Yeah. You can't fight an ideology, and then you have to look at communism, and you have to look at Stalin. Yeah. The ultimate thing: get rid of the man, get rid of the problem, and that's what's about to happen to Hamas. Get rid of Hamas, you get rid of the problem. So either lay down your arms or die. That's what, and they want to die anyway. That is what will happen, because the plan means nothing. They won't lay down their guns. That's a reality.
That is, yeah, there it is. Andrew, thank you very much indeed for that. That is the kind of reality, isn't it? Even if you said, right, okay, if you go to Gaza, there's, for argument's sake, there's sort of a committee of 100 Hamas chiefs who are kind of pulling all the strings and the levers on this. If all of those 100 were eradicated, the air bubble effect just comes into play. You press that down, you get rid of that, and something pops up somewhere else. And this is not about being pessimistic, because there is a school of thought that says, look, on a day like today, let's just enjoy the fact that this is a peace agreement and everyone agrees to it. Let's bar the elements or the bullet points where they said, no, we don't agree to that bit. But broadly speaking, why not just see it for what it is, enjoy it, don't be negative, don't consider that it can't be done or it can't last. But I think it's not a big leap, is it? It's not a massive leap to wonder if this is kind of impossible, just based on fundamentalist ideology. And when that is politicised Islamism, then it's a lethal cocktail. It doesn't really take, you haven't got to know loads about anything to do with the details around geopolitical agreements, history and religion, etc., in order to know that this is, clearly at best a little bit tricky. Hamas has named 4 hostages whose bodies it says it will be released today. So we have obviously the hostages that are alive have all been released, but it was the others that didn't make it, that were killed, that were murdered. Hamas's armed Al-Qassam Brigades says it will hand over the bodies of 4 Israeli hostages today. Guy Ulez, Yossi Sharabi, Bevin Joshi and Daniel Perez will be handed over today without specifying a time as part of the prisoner exchange with Israel. So that's what we're hearing so far. We'll bring you more detail when we get it. In a couple of moments, we're going to turn our attention to this China. You might have been hearing of China, as Donald Trump might say. You might not have quite grabbed you what was going on here, the court case that kind of collapsed and why it collapsed. It's really rather extraordinary. The more you read about it, the more terrifying it actually is. We're going to talk to Sir Richard Dearlove, former head of MI6, a man who knows his way around issues of an espionage-based nature. We'll talk to him in a couple of moments to get his take on what's been happening. Keep it here. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 25 to 3. Now, Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, has sparked a backlash after appearing to blame the Crown Prosecution Service for the China spy scandal. She defended Keir Starmer's advisor, Jonathan Powell, denying that he played a role in the dropped prosecution and insisting he retained Starmer's full confidence. Let's have a listen to what she said.
What I can say today, to be absolutely clear, is that he was not involved in the substance of the case and discussions around that, or the evidence connected to the case. I can give you that reassurance. He did not have those conversations around the substance or the evidence of the case. These are matters for the relevant authorities, the Crown Prosecution Service, and they date back to 2023.
But pressure on Mr Powell is growing. Critics, including Priti Patel, former Home Secretary, and former MI6 Chief Sir Richard Dearlove, all accuse Labour of appeasing Beijing. And the White House has warned that the failed prosecution could damage intelligence sharing between the UK and the US. Well, let's speak to the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Just give us your reaction, firstly, when you first heard what had gone on here and this trial had kind of almost mysteriously, or some might say not quite so mysteriously when you look into it, but what was your first reaction when you realised what had happened here?
I was completely flabbergasted. The idea that China is not a threat to national security it's unbelievable that no one in government was prepared to make a statement to that end. Do you want me to list why it's a threat to national security?
Well, I tell you what, it wouldn't be a bad idea. You've been in the hot seat, so you know exactly what you're looking at when it comes to countries that could have an area of concern about the way they behave and the way they trade and act and all the rest of it. Just give us an overview then as to why China is really not a country to be trusted.
Well, for a start, you had the Director General of the Security Service some time ago standing up in public and saying they were the most serious threat to our national security of any single nation. So there we have a clear statement. In addition to that, you've got hostile cyber activity against the UK. You've got Chinese support for the war in Ukraine, which is probably crucial to the Russians' military performance there. You have spying on Parliament, these two gentlemen who clearly had some relationship with Chinese intelligence and passed material to them. You have China harassing Royal Naval warships in international waters sailing through the cross-strait issue. You have a defence policy which is based on an alliance with Australia, AUKUS, where we're going to help them build nuclear submarines to meet the Chinese threat in the Pacific. You have them stealing intellectual property in our universities. All right, I can go on, but that'll give you a fair idea.
Indeed, and I think most people, I mean, certainly senior politicians would be aware of all of this stuff. And this case, and I'll say this in sort of layman's terms, Richard, and I'm sure you can correct me, but broadly speaking, if the court case, wasn't going to acknowledge China as a threat in one form or another, then the very foundations of that case would therefore be not just diluted, but diminished to the point that the case collapses. That's broadly what's happened.
Yeah. I mean, the legislation is complicated here because the prosecution was brought under the 1911 Official Secrets Act, which is a pretty clunky piece of legislation, which hasn't been changed, and I think does place emphasis on the word enemy. But my understanding is we've actually never had a sort of formal list of the UK's enemies, and that you can make a prosecution on the grounds if you can prove damage to national security. Now, I've just listed why there is damage to national security. Okay, since then the act has changed. You've now got it's the Registration of Foreign Interests Act, and it's much easier to prosecute under that new law. But I think the earlier case is clean cut. The law is pretty clean cut, and I just cannot understand why the National Security Advisor or his deputy couldn't make a statement to that end about China. If they weren't willing to make it, why didn't they ask the Director General of MI5?
Well,
why
indeed.
didn't they ask the retiring head of MI6 who had just left office? I mean, there are all sorts of. Why didn't they ask someone like me? And there's a whole crowd of people around who have massive knowledge on this issue.
I was going to say, I would imagine, and I don't think this breaches any of that Official Secrets Act that you just mentioned, that when you were head of MI6, a week or maybe even a day wouldn't pass, possibly even an hour, without a file marked China on it coming across your desk.
Pretty much, that's the case. You know, they have very hostile intelligence services. There are 3 organizations which are a serious problem, and all of them, I'm sure, are active in the United Kingdom. We had a case recently with this solicitor, Christine Lee, who was being financed by something called the United Front Works Department, who had been trying to suborn and entertain MPs. The moment she was identified and questioned by the security service, she did a runner, disappeared back to communist China.
Yeah. In terms of the sort of political angle of this, because it does, you know, it certainly feels that this is very political. The government want to, you know, they want to maintain some kind of relationship with China. They don't want inconvenient court cases that are going to somehow besmirch China's good name. I say that with tongue in cheek. They want to make sure that they've got nice clean decks and they can deal with this regime, which after all is still a communist regime, despite what the veneer tells us. Is it as simple as that this was really, if to put it another way, a PR job for the government?
Well, I'm mystified because, you know, the one thing the Chinese understand is reciprocity. We treat them like they treat us. The idea that we are prosecuting 2 of their spies, do we really think it'll affect trade with China?
Yeah.
You know, there are many countries that have had to deal with this problem. The United States frequently. The best case is Australia. The Australians have not been reticent about prosecuting, you know, aggressive Chinese espionage activity. And look, their economy is far more bound up with China than any other Western nation. So I really don't understand what happens. If it's a legal cock-up, it is one of massive inconfidence.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, you know, we have a prime minister who's a former DPP. I mean, what on earth are we dealing with? You know, you can't say it's a legal issue and claim it's a sort of accident of misadministration, or you can't, you know, both ways it's absurd.
Well, I'm sure, therefore, you will be intrigued to know what kind of response or further response we're going to get from Sir Keir Starmer. We know that the Kemi Badenoch and others, naturally it's her job, she's the official opposition, are going to push him on this. I would assume this week at Prime Minister's Question Time. Are you hopeful in any way? What does your instinct tell you in terms of the response that we might hear from the government?
Well, I think they're in a very tricky place. How are they going to explain their way around this? And when a minister goes on television, as Bridget Phillipson did, and uses clearly a very carefully calculated phrase about substance or evidence, you know that there's a fire underneath the smoke. She wouldn't use a phrase like that. It's like the famous, you know, there are lots of famous legal phrases in past scandals where ministers have tried to worm their way around and then say, oh, well, we didn't lie on this.
Yeah, we never actually said that.
Yeah, there's clearly a problem here. You know, we don't know quite what the proportions are and we don't know who's involved. But you know, clearly the office of the National Security Advisor must be the place that we look first, and that is Jonathan Powell. And, you know, I'd be keen to know how he would explain himself. Of course, he's not going to be sitting in Parliament. The questions can go to the Prime Minister or the Foreign Secretary or one of the senior ministers of the government. But I think they are in a mess on this.
How important is it, Sir Richard, that we get to the bottom of this? I mean, this is what tends to happen with kind of cases of controversy, and I think this goes sort of slightly beyond a little bit of controversy, is they're sort of kicked into the long grass, and maybe at some point somebody says, oh, we'll have an inquiry, or we'll bring in a barrister to have a look into it, or something like that. That may happen, but just give us an indication of how serious you think this is and why we do really need to know more about it.
Well, China's a very important trading partner of the UK. I'm not an isolationist. I don't think any of us are. We have to have a relationship with them. And we need to have a relationship based on reciprocity and understanding that certain activities, if they're caught out and we're caught out, if we're caught spying in China, we're going to be in deep trouble with the Chinese government. Someone's going to get prosecuted. No beating about the bush. Do we really think they're going to sweep it under the carpet? No, they're not. And similarly, we have to have a relationship that we understand. You've also got a pending issue of some importance, which is the planning permission for this mighty Chinese embassy in the old Royal Mint building on the edge of the city, well, right on the City of London. And, this is going to play into that issue. I gather the British government also want to do some changes or increase the building work at our embassy in Beijing. These things have to be sorted out. And we have to be direct with the Chinese and say, no, you can't. If you do this, you're going to get hit by us. And similarly, we would expect the same thing to happen in the other direction.
You might think so. Listen, Sir Richard, it's been great to have you on, sir. Thank you for being with us. Sir Richard Dearlove is the former head of MI6. There's not a lot he doesn't know about areas such as which countries pose a bit of a threat and in which ways. And that was just the stuff he could talk about. 0344 499 1000 comments on that. Lots more to come. We'll go back to your calls in a couple of moments. Vincent says, why are we not sticking tariffs on all these Chinese cars they're selling at cost, subsidised by the Chinese government? Well, it kind of, I think it's a really good point. I think that kind of feeds into this court case thing. And the legal element of this, as Richard Dearlove just said, it's fairly complex stuff, but broadly speaking, the headline here is we didn't want to upset China, I think. We just didn't want to upset China. We don't want to play that game. Make it go away. Let's not, we don't recognise them as a rogue state or as a state that poses any kind of danger. So therefore, we can't use that terminology in court. The alleged spies were not spying for a rogue state because we don't know where there's a rogue. The China are not a rogue state. They're decent partners of ours. It's all of that. Let's get a word from Peter in Oxfordshire. Back on that issue of Israel. Peter, what are your thoughts? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Thanks for taking the call.
Pleasure.
It does seem, doesn't it, that the left are always complaining about things which they themselves are responsible for. So, for example, they accuse Israel of genocide, and yet it is they on the streets who are calling for the death of Israelis.
Yeah, I don't know what point they don't go home at night, lay their head on the pillow and think, that was a bit weird.
But it's so horrible. I mean, Trump was very positive today, and I think we should try to be optimistic.
Yeah.
A lot of the problem, obviously, is the religious fanaticism that exists in the Middle East, which has held it back for generations. But in particular, I think we've got to raise two issues, I think, in this country. I think, first of all, I think that marches must be banned. Once there is evidence that people are using death calls on the main streets of London against Jewish people, there cannot be any possible argument for maintaining the marches. And the Home Secretary should be called upon to ban them. And secondly, it must raise issues about the police. If the police are arresting somebody who simply says he stands by Israel and at the same time allows these death chants to take place on the street, then the commissioner must be held responsible for this.
You would think so, right? I mean, you don't need to be a copper to know that.
Absolutely. I mean, the police are out of control, I think, at the moment, and it's very, very worrying.
Something isn't adding up on this, and I know the police have 10,000 different jobs when they police something, and there's that whole thing of what's worse, ignoring a few things or then having a further riot on you. I get that. I think we're beyond that though now, Peter. I think we're now in a place where we can really call it out.
I mean, this is not the country I've lived in all my life. There's something really sinister going on in this country at the moment. And I think, as you say, it has to be called out, and the government has to be held account. Either the government is going to ban these marches, and hold the Commissioner to account or get Sadiq Khan to hold the Commissioner to account. I don't imagine he will.
Yeah.
But I think it is sufficiently serious now that we have to treat it as a national emergency.
I think you're right. Peter, thank you. Great call. It's all powerful stuff. Some really good calls on this as well. And, of course, as we sit here, we still have the controversy over the hostages, the dead hostages that haven't been returned. Nobody will ever know, it seems, and I don't know whether there is any obligation on Hamas to explain the circumstances of individuals who didn't survive. They were clearly, killed by Hamas, but were the circumstances? Did they die on the first day, October the 7th? Were they housed somewhere? Were they shot? Were they stuck? Whatever the case was. I don't know whether that information is ever forthcoming, but there will doubtless be families that want to know what, or at least some of that. And it appears that we're heading in a direction where Hamas will simply say, we don't know. Well, we do know one thing, that you're responsible, okay? We know that much, but I guess the information for many of the families, that will be a shortfall on what people want to know. They want to know a bit of detail about their loved ones, even if it's the most macabre and upsetting detail. I think they would perhaps quite like to have the opportunity to find out about the last days, weeks or months of the person they have lost. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
It's not merely Israel, Hamas, but many other sides that had to be brought in, such as the support of Hamas and others like that, to get to this point where finally the one thing that we always knew would end the conflict in sort of a military sense, i.e. the return of the hostages, has happened. So, you're right to say we don't know quite how it's going to unfold from here, but for this particular part, he said from day one, the hostages are all coming back. All of them are coming back, and he's got them back, and it was he and his administration who've made the difference.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed talk. 03444991000. Let's. We got a brand new voice of doom, by the way. This is the mystery voice of a political nature. Invariably, you're looking for a politician or someone obviously connected to the world of politics. It could be recent, could be years ago, dead or alive, male, female. You decide. Let's have a listen to the voice.
During the following 5 years.
Blimey. Does sound on the old side, doesn't it? I don't think that came from last week's PMQs. But you never know. Here it is again.
During the following 5 years.
87222, you want to have a crack at that? 87222, don't phone, only message. One more time.
During the following 5 years.
And hopefully we'll get an answer. We can tell you who it is on the other side of the news at 3 o'clock. Deirdre says there is a theory that those that didn't survive, some of those that didn't survive 7/7 were taken dead from the music festival and held by Hamas in order to build up a count of how many people they had taken. I don't have any evidence of that, but we do know that they wouldn't have, well, the fact they're not on the list of people that are alive and handed over would suggest these people clearly were killed either on the 7th of October, as Deirdre has just suggested. I don't know if there's any credence in that theory, but certainly, yeah, they would have met, you know, one would assume a really unpleasant death at the hands of Hamas, who took their lives and would have done so brutally. That's as much as we know. Just Me says, just to remind you and anyone elsewhere that believes the remaining hostages just died, who thinks that? What do you think, they died of old age? They were murdered. I think we kind of know that. Whether beaten to death, starved, or yes, we understand the details of all of that. Happy to read that out, but I don't think that's within any kind of doubt that these people, as I have said constantly, would have been, those that didn't survive were killed or murdered and killed by Hamas. I think that's, I hope, fairly plain. Let's go to Alex in Bristol. Alex, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Yeah, hi, and thanks for taking the call.
Pleasure.
I was in a household in Oxfordshire, in a very nice part of Oxfordshire, last week, and I was sitting down talking to the 15-year-old daughter, who's a highly intelligent girl, the mother, and we were just chatting, and she had a friend there, and the friend said that a boy at her school, in a very nice part of Oxfordshire, had put on his TikTok account that he wished he was Adolf Hitler because he'd have finished the job properly.
Oh,
now,
God.
That in itself was terrible. So the mother said to her, well, you know, that's not a very nice thing. And, you know, for the Jewish people have been through an awful lot with the Holocaust and everything, to which this girl replied quite innocently, oh, no, that's not right. Only the bad Jews were sent to the gas ovens.
Really?
Yep. And I said to her, where did you get that information? Wow. Yeah, where did you get that information? She said, it's on TikTok.
Oh,
it's
great.
Only the bad that's where she got it from. And that's where a lot of these kids are getting their information from. I'm very rarely shocked at anything.
I mean, that's horrifying. I mean, I don't know whether this person has ever seen any imagery of people that were sent to concentration camps, many of whom, thousands, tens of thousands, were children and babies that went. I mean, these were bad Jews, were they, these little kids?
Apparently all the things. And obviously we put her straight and she was quite embarrassed. But she said it's on TikTok, and it just said all the bad Jews. Hitler sent, that's why this boy, but Hitler only sent the bad Jews there because they had to get rid of them, and that's why they got sent to the concentration camps to be killed.
It is extraordinary how people believe that stuff, isn't it? I mean, just extraordinary that anybody would. But you, if you saw that on TikTok, your first assumption would be, well, that's obviously not true.
Unfortunately, our young people are being indoctrinated with this terrible stuff, and it's as I said, I sat there open mouthed, and her mother, the girl's mother, it wasn't the girl that said it was her friend, was absolutely horrified, and so was the girl, in fairness. And as I said, it takes a lot to shock me, but that actually, I said, is that what all your friends and things? So, yeah, it's on TikTok, and their friend wants to be Adolf Hitler because he wants to finish the job properly and get rid of
life. That's
I know.
Unbelievable. Alex, thank you. It's a grim reality, however, of our times. Social media, which once in a while people refer to as the new news. You know that phrase that half-wits use, we are the news now. Like, a couple of merchants that just make some stuff up or give a wonky account of something, or an unsourced, that's the worst offence, the unsourced stuff. Look, why are you not talking about this, Collins? Gus, it didn't happen, that's why. Or if it did, there's certainly no evidence to suggest it did. So we're in that kind of territory. And sometimes you can kind of laugh that off, and it can be just like a bit of a conspiracy thing. Have you not heard that they're going to force-feed kids fish fingers between July and August in order to get up the protein quota or whatever? And you read that, so it's obviously rubbish. But it's when it's a little bit wavering or a bit more serious and sinister, such as the point that Alex just made. Man alive, you are in really, really terrible territory. And the idea that somebody thinks it because they saw it on TikTok. If you saw it on TikTok or Twitter, then your first response should be, it's probably not true. Here's the voice of doom.
During the following 5 years...
We'll tell you who that is after the news at 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the home of common sense, coming up on 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. So, Reform UK have blasted Sir Keir Starmer for hypocrisy after reports that he plans to blame Nigel Farage and Brexit for tax hikes in the up-and-coming budget. I mean, that's quite extraordinary, isn't it? You're going to blame a party that hasn't even been in government. But hey, don't let stuff like that stand in the way of a good political manoeuvre. We'll get details on that in just a second. Also this afternoon, Labour's digital ID card system has sparked concerns over potential backdoor gender self-ID and compromised biological data accuracy. Critics warn the cards could allow offenders to exploit gender choice. Thoughts on that as well? We'll chat to those who know. And conservation groups and councils warn wind farms are damaging the Scottish Highlands, threatening tourism reliant on natural beauty. I mean, there might be a place for some of these things, but that's a really close call where you lob a wind farm, right? 0344 499 1000 is where you'll find us. We'll come to the Voice of Doom shortly. Stand by for that. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Alicia, we do it a bit later now. We got Alicia producing today. Well, I use the word producing very loosely. Alicia is usually with Julia, of course. But yes, so the Voice of Doom will happen. But have we got a winner? Have we got a winner? Find out in around about 10 minutes' time. Now, as I mentioned, Reform UK blasting Keir Starmer for hypocrisy over those reports that he plans to blame Nigel Farage and Brexit on tax hikes in the up-and-coming budget. Labour is expected to cite a £120 billion hit to the economy from leaving the EU, a move they claim Farage pushed with easy sloganeering before then walking away. Reform call the claims ludicrous, noting Labour has been in power for over a year. Yeah, they're suddenly coming up with this. Meanwhile, Reform UK revealed that they now have more than 260,000 paid members. Richard Tice hailed the achievement, saying Nigel Farage's movement has gone from strength to strength. Let's speak to Alex Wilson, Reform UK London Assembly member. Regularly helps us out on these kind of stories. Alex, good afternoon to you. There is no real surprise, is there? You can almost see the old bods and the mandarins over there at Downing Street writing up the budget, going, yeah, let's use the Brexit line. We haven't done that for a while, and it sounds like they're about to do it.
Yeah, well, they've run out of their own ideas, so they're kind of really scraping the barrel here and deciding to blame Nigel, blame Reform, blame Brexit, for something which has completely nothing to do with us. We've not been in power yet, so how can we be responsible for the choices that this government is making? As soon as this government came into power, just over a year and a half ago, first thing they did was cave into public sector unions. Big pay rises. That has to be paid for somehow. That's what's created a big black hole. The other issue that they're talking about, productivity, which I think that these new figures are coming on the back of productivity estimates being wound downwards. We all know the big impact in productivity that's happened in the last few years was lockdown, working from home, the fact that people are not getting back into the office properly and getting on with their jobs, and everyone works a 4-day week at best, and 3-day week if they can get away with it, because 3 days in the office maximum and 2 days doing whatever you want to at home. It's ridiculous. So they've got to take responsibility for those decisions and try and act on those before they start passing the blame around. Absolutely. And
it's quite extraordinary that, I mean, I'm not including Labour's time in power, but up until recently we were, in fact, I think still to this day, our economy is doing far better than many of those European countries that are still very much in the EU, the Germanys and the Frances of this world. We've fared better on so many measures and graphs, and now they haven't left the EU. So what's going on? How does that sit within this Labour idea that it's all due to Brexit?
Yeah, exactly. There are problems that are affecting countries right across Europe and right across the world, and productivity is one. Energy cost is another. And again, that's something that this government has got to take a lot of responsibility for, in that we have the most expensive industrial electricity prices in the world, 4 times those of America. And is it any wonder that it's difficult for industry to remain productive and viable and competitive? When we're paying through the nose for energy. If only we made better use of our own natural resources instead of chasing this ridiculous net zero fantasy, then we could be much more competitive, we could grow more quickly, and then we could be in a much better position to actually raise the revenue to pay for the public services that we all want.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, that wouldn't be too much to ask, I would suggest, Alex. Let's look at this story as well. This popped up in the Times today. Nigel Farage will break with his manifesto pledges of the $90 billion in tax cuts as he attempts to bolster his party's economic credibility. What do you make of that, Alex? Because there might be some Reform members who are a little bit disappointed in that. Nigel Farage, I'm sure, would say, if this story is true, by the way, would say, well, we can only react to the economy we're left with.
Exactly, and each election, the manifesto has to be written for the election that you're about to face, rather than the election that you've just had. And if this turns out to be the case, then I think what we'll be trying to do is establish a really strong foundation of credibility on this subject. The economy is the most important subject facing the country, cost of living, how we pay for public services, and we need to be robust on that. We know that our figures are going to be very much more closely scrutinised as we get closer to the next election than they were at the last election, and the figures have to add up. It's still very, very much in the party's DNA to be a tax-cutting party. We are a party that believes in the Laffer curve, that believes in right-wing economics, shrinking the size of the state, letting the private sector grow, flourish, and raising the revenue. You need to do that. But in the first instance, we have to demonstrate to the electorate, to the other parties, to the bond markets, to everybody that's showing an interest in this, we have to demonstrate that we're serious about tackling the growth in spending first. Once we've done that, then yes, of course, we'll deliver tax cuts. Nigel said it's still the aspiration, absolutely, to deliver that £20,000 threshold for income tax, but that will be something that we'll look to do towards the end of the Parliament rather than at the beginning of it.
There was some interesting news as well over the weekend. Membership for Reform UK, I mean, it is really up there now, 260,000 paid-up members. It's interesting that Labour only have, and I say only, they have 309,000 members. I mean, that is not far off where Reform are clearly heading.
We're very close on the heels now. I mean, I don't know if you remember, it was only Boxing Day last year that we overtook the Conservatives on, 160,000 or thereabouts, and now we're very, very hot on the heels of Labour. So the growth in membership has been phenomenal over the last year, but it's matching other things that are growing. The branch network being established, got over 450 local branches now that are fighting campaigns locally, winning council by-elections every week. Just in the last 2 weeks, so in October so far, we've won 9 out of 14 seats that were available in council by-elections. The polling is very strong. I think over 130 consecutive leads in the opinion polls. Now, all this matters hugely because it's about getting the party in a state where we're ready to fight that next election. Now, obviously, we're still 3 years away. Things can change. We have to avoid complacency. Polls can go down as well as up. But the position we're in, both nationally with the polling and with those all-important results we had back in May, being backed up by what's going on locally on the ground, the branches, the membership, the weekly council by-elections, all that points to a picture where Reform is very, very clearly in contention to win the next general election. We're going to have to keep working hard, keep fighting hard, make sure the policy is credible, make sure the numbers stack up. But I'd certainly rather be in the position we're in now than the position we were in just 9 months ago, let alone a year or 18 months ago.
Is it going to be a struggle, Alex, for Reform to find the candidates? And obviously, if you're Tory or Labour or even Lib Dems, you tend to mostly already have people in place. They might win a seat, they might lose a seat. Obviously, Reform is starting from scratch. Now, everyone has to start somewhere. But, I mean, the job of being able to find thousands of people for local council elections is hard. Trying to find MPs or potential MPs is hard too. It's obviously a task. I know David Bull very well, and I know it's in the greatest of hands, but you can't underestimate how tricky that's going to be for your party.
It is a challenge, and it's a challenge to get anyone to stick their head above the parapet and get involved in frontline politics, because 9 times out of 10 you're just setting yourself up for a whole load of abuse from your friends, your colleagues, and your acquaintances on social media. It's in many ways a thankless task, but actually it's quite a rewarding task in itself, because you're serving your local community, you're being a voice of common sense for the area where you live. And actually, what was quite remarkable about the local elections in May, as well as how well we did in winning seats and winning councils, actually getting candidates nominated. We had more candidates nominated than either of the other main parties, and that's the first time that's happened in probably over 100 years.
Wow.
So yes, it's a challenge, but it's absolutely one that we can deliver on. Whereas compared to the local elections in 2024, we only contested 12% of vacancies. In just a few months ago in May, we contested over 99% of vacancies. Yeah. And for the last 3 months, we are the only party, August, September, October, we are the only party that has contested 100% of vacancies in those council by-elections. So, yes, it's a challenge. It's to get the candidates, but it's something we've been working on very hard. The results are speaking for themselves, and fingers crossed, long may that continue.
And just finally this, a really disturbing story of George Finch, who's a 19-year-old Reform UK council leader in Warwickshire. He's been physically attacked in the street. He was called a racist and a fascist. Mr Farage firmly pointing the finger at the Prime Minister after this happened, attributing the attack to political opponents' rhetoric, highlighting tensions during Reform UK's rise. And we've heard it from the sultanas of this world, but we've also heard it from Keir Starmer. We've heard it from the Home Secretary. We've heard it right across the board, really, that, you know, far right, dangerous, racist, that policy's racist. I happen to disagree with it, so therefore it's racist. I mean, this kind of, so you keep saying that to enough people and some nut job's going to take it as real and act on it. And that's clearly what happened with poor George Finch.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more strongly. You rightly say we've heard it from the Prime Minister, from Deputy Prime Minister, Home Secretary, the Education Secretary as well. They've all, at the Labour conference, they were obsessed about Nigel Farage and reform. Probably mentioned Nigel Farage more at the Labour conference than we did at our own. But they're using that kind of language: far right, racist, Nazi. Zach Polanski on Question Time the other night, from the new Green leader, accusing Zia Youssef of being a Nazi. And if you do that enough, then yes, people are going to react to that. I think the worst thing that Keir Starmer said in his speech at conference, where he said, we must go into battle armed not just with words but with action. Now, what is that if that's not a call for someone to take up some sort of physical violence against reform candidates, activists, volunteers? We had a street stall the weekend before last where our volunteers that were manning the streets all had hot coffee thrown at them. This is happening now. The abuse, the potential violence is happening now more than ever. But what it does do, I think most of our people are very firm, very strong, very resolute, and it will firm up their desire to do the right thing and keep fighting, because we're not going to give up. The more people we seem to be annoying, the stronger we're getting, and the bigger that victory will be, and the more rewarding it will be for getting there.
Indeed. Listen, Alex, great to have you on with us. Alex Wilson, Assembly Member in the London Assembly for Reform UK. Thank you to him. I'd love to get to gauge your reaction on this, and it does, kind of curious, it dovetails into this sort of world of kind of hatred, and in these sort of areas, the hatred demonstrably comes from the left. It's not coming from the right. So if you disagree with somebody and they happen to be a party that is to the right of centre, and the last time I looked, there's nothing illegal about being to the right of centre, and secondly, I think if you poll and speak to most people on a range of issues, you'll find that's where most people just naturally sit, without even being political. If you ask a range of questions about education and health and law and order and safety, etc., the answers would invariably swing into the right of centre part of the political spectrum. But because we live in this curious place where anyone that has that badge of being, well, almost anything to the right of Keir Starmer, which is kind of most things, then you are somehow, that's not acceptable to just acknowledge that you're you acknowledge a greenie. Who's that half-wit that runs Reform, that runs Green UK, the Green Party? Zach Polanski. I mean, it's just a made-up name. I think his name is something like Dean Jones or something. But he thought, no, I'm going to go for the, call myself Zach Polanski. And he's going for populism. He wants to kind of be the sort of left-wing version of Nigel Farage. Unfortunately, in his case, it means that wheeling out a lot of hot air and guff and flannel juice and gibberish on a regular basis. So there's a lot to be said about Polanski, but it's not just him. Our own Prime Minister. So you take groups of people that you fundamentally disagree with, and you don't just say, I fundamentally disagree with you. You say they're a racist, or you say it's the oldest one in the book. And the way it works, you haven't even got to be a psychologist to work this out, is that if you have sufficiently othered, maligned and reduced your political opponents to that level, then you're actually quite relaxed about what you say about them. Now, nut jobs in politics are plentiful. So these people aren't just saying it as like a little soundbite. I'll call him a Nazi, call him a racist. They actually believe it. They believe it because they are the ones that have sufficiently othered, reduced and maligned to such a level that calling somebody like a Reform UK council leader a racist and a fascist, it's just like insulting Saddam Hussein or Pol Pot or something. It doesn't miss fine. Why would that be bad? Why would you? No one's going to condemn you for saying, I think Saddam Hussein was a brutal, horrendous, tyrannical dictator who murdered people. No one's going to criticise you for that. That's the ballpark these clowns are in. They're literally in that place. So they believe it, so they can say it. I saw somebody on my own X feed responding to the attack on George Finch by saying, well, yeah, but he is a fascist and a racist. It's like, but no, you have no evidence for that. You're just repeating the lie. What you mean is it's somebody who fundamentally disagrees with you and comes from a different part of the political spectrum. You won't find any evidence of this fascism or racism from most of the people that are being called or referred to as this, whether it's Polanski on Question Time or Keir Starmer in his own leaders' conference speech or live on TV. I mean, the list goes on. And so that's where we're at, and it is very dangerous. And I know it's become a little tired for some people to invoke Charlie Kirk in this conversation, but you can't help, but a court case will decide all of this, but you can't help but draw some pretty obvious conclusions that somebody like Kirk, who was practicing, he wasn't everybody's cup of tea. He never said he was, and no one else said he was, but he was a Christian. He was a good family man. He had a set of views. He believed in them. Most people would agree in most of his views. There'd be some that you don't agree. Birth control, things like that, I wouldn't agree with him on. And if I met him in the pub and didn't know anything about him, I might think, this he's compelling. Might be a bit strange, but he's compelling. Whatever. But he wasn't a flipping Nazi. I mean, how anybody ever went from Kirk to Nazi, I mean, that's a thing called Godwin's Law, but it's happening like in one move. What, you want to point to a global, well-known Nazi? You pick Charlie Kirk? What the hell is wrong with these people? That's where they went. You say that enough times, you get a thing going on social media, you get all the left-wing meerkats agreeing with you, and it takes that much time before someone goes, well, he's a Nazi, isn't he? He's got to die. Doesn't matter if he dies. He's a flipping Nazi. I've killed a Nazi. Who cares? And that's how it works, and that's how it's working. And I'm afraid that Keir Starmer and others have to take a degree of responsibility when you start throwing words like Nazi and racism around. 0344 499 1000. Your comments on that, please. The big question of the day, will Donald Trump's peace deal last? You hope so. Big day, monumentous, significant. Nobody... momentous was the word I was looking for. Nobody disputes all of that, but making the thing last is going to be key. And just before we go to a break, Voice of Doom. This was the voice we played you before the news.
During the following 5 years...
Very simple. Who is that was the question. Who is that? These were some of the guesses. Harold Macmillan, no. Dennis Healy, no. Jacob Rees-Mogg. Rees-Mogg sounds like he's from that era, right? No. Neville Chamberlain, it was not. Clement Attlee, no. But we actually have got a winner. John in Rugby called this correctly Sir Keith Joseph, who had varying roles in Mrs Thatcher's government. Made it into cabinet as well. Keith Joseph, very loyal to Thatcher, of course, very much by her side. He was education minister. He was Secretary of State for Industry, which was the kind of the bigger job he had right at the beginning of Thatcher's time in office. And by the way, a little factoid, Margaret Thatcher would have been 100 years old today. That dates you, doesn't it? 100 years old. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
not merely Israel and Hamas, but many other sides that had to be brought in, such as the supporters of Hamas and others like that, to get to this point where finally the one thing that we always knew would end the conflict in sort of a military sense, i.e. the return of the hostages, has happened. So, you're right to say we don't know quite how it's going to unfold from here, but for this particular part, he said from day one, the hostages are all coming back. All of them are coming back, and he's got them back. And it was he and his administration who've made the difference.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk. Let's move to this story. We are going to go back to your calls shortly. Labour's digital ID card system. This thing is unveiling by the hour at the moment with so many holes and faults and problems, and some rather sinister. Labour's ID card system has sparked concerns over potential backdoor gender self-ID and compromised biological data accuracy. Critics warn the card could allow offenders to exploit gender choice, concealing identities without strict biological definitions. Let's speak with Fiona McAnina, who is Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters. Fiona, good afternoon to you. I kind of thought something like this might come along somehow. I don't know whether it's by accident or whatever. I'm sure those behind digital ID would say, well, we haven't fully built it yet, so we don't know. What's your reaction to this?
Well, what people don't know is that you can already change the sex marker on your passport, say from male to female, just by sending a letter. And the Passport Office appear not to know how many people have done that. It's been going on for years. It could be 50,000. It could even be 100,000. They don't know. So we already have a problem that government data that should be reliable and should be honest can't be relied on. And so for the government to put that into a system where anyone can produce an official document that says, I'm female, even though he's clearly male, we think that's a terrible idea. And this is not people who've been supervised and got themselves a certificate, a small number with a controlled medical process. This is just a letter on demand. So we're saying, do not do this, because anybody can have one document that says they're male, another one that says they're female. It just seems crazy. It's almost hard to believe it's happening, but it is happening.
It is happening. What is the, has there been any kind of official response to this at the moment? Because we've had a, Supreme Court hearing, which is relevant to this conversation, and a conclusion. What are those in power, those that are actually pulling the levers, telling us?
Well, we've been telling them about this for the last 18 months, actually. We've been concerned, even before they started talking about digital ID, because they already have systems where you can kind of verify your identity through a government-approved app. So we've been flagging this, and they don't want to know whether it's too difficult or too expensive or I don't know what. But it is a known problem in government, and it's just being ignored as far as we can tell. But if it becomes digital ID, then it really can't be ignored. Like we said, a sex offender can change their name and change their sex, and then no one can track down who they really are. It's dangerous.
Yeah, and this is... I mean, this even goes beyond the usual gender debate that we might have, Fiona, or you and I and you and others would have on this, because there's obvious... areas of abuse for this, whether it's about choosing your gender or choosing a life of crime.
Yes, and the problem we have here is that the Passport Office have not kept any records. So they don't even know how many people, who they are. And so if people can go around, for example, using a QR code to get themselves into the female changing room at a gym, there will be nothing to stop them using a falsified passport just to say that they're female for that purpose, even if in all the other parts of their life they're male. So it's just massively open to abuse.
So we wait and see what the next step of this is. I mean, the fact that I mentioned the Supreme Court ruling, that would surely be at play in this discussion.
Yeah, I mean, the Supreme Court has said, you know, a lot of the time you shouldn't discriminate against people based on their sex or their age or anything else. But we have laws that say when you can, and in some cases you must, in order to protect them. And women are more vulnerable to male violence than men are. We know why we sometimes need single-sex spaces. So for the government to let people obtain what looks like an official government-backed ID with the wrong sex marker on it seems to run counter to everything the Supreme Court said about why sometimes sex matters.
Yes, as your campaign says. I mean, there it is. Absolutely bang on. Listen, Fiona, thank you. We will speak again on this. I know it's a sort of developing story with the technology that is, you know, we are still awaiting to see where it goes and how it's implemented. But that is the potential problem, one of many potential problems with this. Fiona McAnina, who is Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters. Comments coming in from you. Rob says, afternoon, Ian, I'm surprised Starmer hasn't blamed Nigel Farage for this Chinese spy case collapse. He blames him for everything else. I mean, he really does live rent-free, doesn't he, in Starmer's head? He has a lot of things that are... What do we do? We don't know what our policy is on this, he says around the cabinet table. And somebody goes, well, let's just blame Nigel, shall we? Really? Can we do that? Blame Nigel? Well, we're talking about the weather here. We've got bad weather coming for the winter. Yes, Nigel's fault. One in from Alison, South Wales. It seems that the police think the government is in charge of our streets and the government think the police are in charge. Shame we can't sack them all and take charge ourselves, especially as both entities are paid for us and they're supposed to take care of us. Also, have we ever... We've had at least one ISIS flag on our streets and it's been seen and felt. If you let one, you end up with a lot. It's just bizarre, isn't it? That you would be, you know, in a world where you've got to be careful what you say. I mean, yeah, we do have free speech, but we just have we're trying to circumnavigate a new kind of era and world. I'm confident with the right government we'll get through it and we can go back to a little bit of normality and stop playing silly games with what somebody might have said on social media. I understand it, if it's threats to kill and that kind of stuff. It's right and proper that it's dealt with. You know, it happened with Nigel Farage recently, where somebody said on a TikTok video the, you know, bang, 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 or pop, 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 whatever it was, and it ended up in the Crown Court at Southwark. Yes, you do investigate that. That's not a bloke just saying hurty words. That's a genuine threat to someone's life. So I get it. There is a hybrid here of you know, rights and wrongs and responsibilities. I think most people understand that. But we do also live in a world where we've seen some real howlers of people getting nicked and nabbed or called into question or sacked and fired because of something they happen to have said on social media, which, by the way, or in a WhatsApp group, which, by the way, hasn't even been all that bad sometimes. I'm not talking about the police stuff that we are all familiar with, Charing Cross, etc. I'm just talking about stuff that could not have possibly harmed anyone in any form, demonstrably innocuous. Might not be everyone's cup of tea, it might be egregious to some people, but innocuous. And yet we've seen people act. But you can simultaneously walk around the street with an ISIS flag. An ISIS flag. I mean, that's another level, right? And you can shout anti-Israeli or anti-Jewish chants. When people use the word Zion, I mean, there's your giveaway, isn't it? When you get into the Zionist card, when you're playing that card. Because all people mean, what was the thing about Zion's, Zis, I think. Did you call them Zis in that video? Zios or something? Zios, you know, bury them essentially, kill them. And what these people mean when they use this sort of word Zionist, they just mean Jews. That's all they mean, by the way. They'll kind of pretend they're talking about a sort of super Jew, a very special kind of Jew, a certain, you know, we're only talking about the horrible Jews. Except that, really? No, you're talking about Jews, mate. That's all it is. It's anti-Semitism, end of story. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 25 to 4 on Talk. Lots more still to come. More of your calls. We'll come back to those in a moment. I want to look at this story. Think of the windswept beauty of the Scottish Highlands. I mean, when you think of areas of the UK, outstanding natural beauty, everyone's got a bit of a list. Different places, whether historic castles, it could be certain villages, you know, Cotswolds. It's not long before you stumble on the phrase, the Scottish Highlands. You think of the beauty, the innate beauty that comes from that region of this country. Well, it's come under a bit of a threat, actually, from wind farm projects, which are set to change the appearance of the landscape forever. I mean, you've got to be really careful what you do with your windmill thing. Pavements are soon to be a lot more of a trip hazard as the government announces a grant scheme for steel EV charging gullies. And speaking of tripping, a council in the Wirral has painted bizarre yellow and orange What's-It road markings to enforce its low traffic neighbourhoods. The question is, how much uglifying of Britain are people prepared to take? Meanwhile, by the way, the government's announced a £25 million scheme for EV charging. Residents can now apply for a metal gully for a curbside parking. Councils will cover 75% of the cost, with the resident providing the other 25%. Let's speak to Harry Wilkinson, Head of Policy of the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Afternoon to you, Harry. You kind of wonder how much jip and nonsense has to happen before somebody goes, hang on, you know, we're changing the landscape of the UK, we're digging up paths, we're painting giant chalk What's-Its onto pavements, before somebody goes, can we just stop this madness and think again?
Well, it's been a tidal wave of net zero nonsense today, unfortunately. But there is something that's connecting all of this, which is that net zero is fundamentally a less efficient, less productive way to meet our energy needs. High costs are inherent to net zero, but also because renewables are less dense energy sources, they require much more land, much more infrastructure. What a nuclear power could generate in a single site would need hundreds of thousands of acres of wind turbines to produce. So what that means for our precious landscapes, like the Highlands, is that they have to be plastered across with these wind farms. Treasured views all over the Highlands will be destroyed. And of course, we'll have to spend huge amounts of money on the kind of grid infrastructure to connect that power to where the energy is needed. And, you know, this costs an awful lot, because at the moment, these wind farms are actually not able to get that power to where it's needed. So we have to pay them to switch off for huge amounts of time. So it's a double payment. That's why people can see their energy bills rise. Yeah.
What's interesting as well about this, and you will know this, Harry, as well, when you try to have an argument, even just a reasoned debate with somebody about the, you know, let's call it the disproportionality of emphasis, financial and effort that is put into this. I have no objection to somebody saying we've found a parallel energy source, we think it could work. Well, OK, let's give it a go in the wings. It can run. We can see what it does. If it works, I'd be the first to go, what, free energy? Of course I want that. I'd be the first. I'm sure you'd be there as well, Harry. We're not seeing the evidence of this at the moment, and that's the problem. But when you try to raise issues such as the optics, the aesthetic carnage that is created as a result of some of this, pavements being dug up because one person in the entire estate bought an electric car. When you advance those very reasonable points, bearing in mind it's mostly taxpayers' money, you're met with a sort of stock answer now, aren't you, which is what's more important, a few quid or saving humanity? Because the people on that side of the argument, they've gone for the bullseye. I mean, they're not saying, oh, it's ideal or it's preferable. They're saying, no, this is about literally life and death. So they won't listen to you, Harry, because they're all about saving people's lives.
Well, it's really important that we confront this head on. As Claire Coutinho explained in her speech to Conservative Party conference last week, you don't save the planet by having the most expensive energy on the planet.
Yeah.
You know, our electricity prices, particularly industrial electricity prices, are the highest in the world. The rest of our electricity prices are amongst the highest in the world. We are witnessing a disaster that no country would want to copy. If we go for cheap electricity, that saves people money in their bills. It also incentivizes people to use electricity, for example, heat pumps and EVs, in a way that would be led by people's choices, led by the market. Instead, what we're seeing is this central planning at every level. And this example of the gullies, that we're being made to subsidize wealthy people with EVs to have a little cable run under the pavement. And this is the name of the game when it comes to net zero. Subsidies for wealthy people. We've seen a huge transfer of wealth from ordinary taxpayers to wealthy people who can afford solar panels on their roof, they can afford an EV. But this is an agenda that's hugely damaging to social mobility, and we have much better priorities. The priority should be, let's focus on getting the cost of energy down.
Spot on. Harry, thank you for your time, sir. Appreciate that. Harry Wilkinson, Head of Policy at the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Thank you to him. Let's go back to more of it. Have you noticed, by the way, as it gets into autumn, we all knew that was going to happen, you know, because obviously we didn't have our heating on for about 4 months, maybe longer than that. And then suddenly gets a bit nippy, doesn't it? Certainly in the morning, if you wake up like 5:30ish when I do, it's cold down there. You might want to notch it up. That's why you've got heating, but you shouldn't have to justify why you put the heating on. What'd you do that for? Well, number one, it was cold. Number two, it was cold. That's kind of the reason I have heating in my house. But the minute that kicks in, you're back paying for if you've got electricity and gas or gas central heating, you're back paying 2 bills again, aren't you? I've had a 4-month holiday of just electricity, and that's pricey enough. So anything you've sort of saved up in your little account, when you pay, you go, oh, I'm in credit with the energy people. Isn't that great? Yeah, till about September, mate. And then you're no longer in credit, and it just goes down, and then round and round it goes again. 0344 499 1000. This is Chris in Oxford. Back to the issue of Israel. Chris, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Ian.
Hello.
Thank you for having me on.
Right.
I think I'm a bit out of place with what you've been discussing.
Oh, we've got everything going on. Nothing ever goes away on this programme, Chris. We can return to it and bring it up again. That's not a problem.
I just wanted to say that I feel a lot of the people who are protesting against Israel are swayed by what they see on the television and the internet. I have no access to either of those. All my news comes on the radio. But even on the radio, what do you expect people to hear when they hear that there were 3 Israeli young men allowed to go free from Hamas, and the Israelis shot all of them? And then there was a little girl who was left orphaned in a car where her parents were murdered by the Israelis, and she was shot dead by the Israelis, and the people in the ambulance who came to rescue her were shot. This is all we ever heard on the radio, were people being shot by Israelis. All these hospitals were destroyed by the Israelis. We never heard of anything apart from a few rockets fired into Israel by Hamas.
And nobody ever... I mean, the rocket thing is just an interesting one to me. You know, those rockets have been going off every day for years, you know, way before October 7th. It's not a new thing, the rockets. Never gets talked about, really. 90% of the time, Israel don't even retaliate to these things.
Precisely. And this is why people over here are demonstrating against the Israelis, because they only hear those bits.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what I hear on the radio, I don't know what people see on the television or hear on the internet. And this is where it's all come from. These are people who have no history. They don't know anything about anything.
Oh, invariably very badly informed, particularly about issues as complex as this. I'm intrigued, Chris, that you don't have the internet.
No, I don't.
Have you ever had the internet?
No. No, I don't listen.
I have an instinctive envy of your position. I mean, all right, I won't be able to find McCall suits without the internet, but I reckon I could live with that. Because it literally has become a sort of surrogate parent or child within everybody's life.
But that's the problem. People are swayed by what they hear on the internet and they see on the television.
Yeah.
But even me, just listening to the radio, this is all I hear, is that Israel is attacking Hamas. Never the other way round.
Yeah,
you hear about them firing rockets, but there's very few people have ever heard by them. Yeah. You don't hear of cities destroyed or hospitals destroyed. And this is all that these people who march on our streets every week are just swayed by. And it's very, very sad. It really is. And I'm sorry, but there you are. This is why I'm saying this is what these people are swayed by, because this is the news on everything. And it's only Israel who are baddies.
I get it. Listen, Chris, you've been fabulous. So lovely to speak with you. Thank you for calling in. Really appreciate that. Chris in Oxford. I think that the no internet and no TV is brilliant. I can see the absolute attraction of just living with a radio. That is incredibly seducing in terms of the clarity of your thought and your brain and your decision-making and opinions. 0344 499 1000. Back with more from you coming next on Talk.
Not merely Israel and Hamas, but many other sides that had to be brought in, such as the support of Hamas and others like that, to get to this point where finally the one thing that we always knew would end the conflict in sort of a military sense, i.e. the return of the hostages, has happened. So, you're right to say we don't know quite how it's going to unfold from here, but for this particular part, he said from day one, the hostages are all coming back. All of them are coming back, and he's got them back. And it was he and his administration who've made the difference.
Everywhere, people are taking to the streets and they're so relieved and happy to see their brothers brought back home from Hamas captivity. So there's lots of hope. The realists in the crowd know that this currently is a ceasefire and it is not a peace deal. If Hamas indeed implements all of President Trump's plan, there's a chance that it becomes a peace deal. But currently it's a ceasefire and a hostage release, which in itself is marvelous.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000 10 to 4. Yeah, Jeremy Carl's going to be here on the other side of the news at 4. Let's go to Graham in Berkshire. Graham, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hi. Well, I'd like to try and put some of the people right on saying that once you've got these windmills up, there's no cost. Well, there's maintenance cost, which I believe is about 86k a year per windmill. There's depreciation, there's interest, there's insurance, there's administration, there's HR costs. And then when you take them down, you've got to try and dispose of them, which also has a cost. So this isn't free energy. There's also the cost of what the alternate use of the land. It could have been used for farming. Now, when you look at solar panels, we're using valuable land up when we could be placing these things on top of car parks. There are grants for people who own houses to put them on, but there are no grants for people who live in social housing who probably need that cheaper energy more than others. Now, it's like giving the money away, but I believe we nearly £1 billion a year for shutting down the windmills, and because they can't produce energy at the times we need it most. That shouldn't be given to them for shutting it down. It should be applied to subsidise the creation of things like sand batteries and storage.
Yep.
That energy could be stored and then released when required, rather than putting it in the pockets of rather wealthy people anyway.
Well, you might think so. You might think so. I mean, the one thing everybody can settle on here, Robert, is that this is unsettled, right? I mean, the idea that it's like, oh, everything's sorted, we've got the windmills, we've got the solar panels, off we go. I mean, it's clearly an extraordinarily expensive way of doing things right now, and we haven't yet seen, although, you know, I get it, as I said to Harry, our last guy, you know, if somebody has got some incredible plan and they've managed to conjure up a parallel system of energising the country, and it's free, I'd buy into it, right?
Yeah, but the point is, I mean, we could actually be investing in our universities to find this sort of energy sources or new energy sources, more efficient energy sources. Make them here instead of subsidising the Chinese communist regime.
Which is what we're doing.
Yeah. And we could then produce work for our own people. Now, I know that sounds, I suppose, xenophobic, but...
Well, it's not xenophobic to want, you know, Gordon Brown said it, British jobs for British people. Graham, listen, I've got to run because we've hit the clock, sadly, and we were going to talk to Robert, but Jeremy Kyle...
I don't know why, but I seem to have arrived a few minutes early.
About 15 minutes early.
I do apologise. Shall I go away and come back?
No, stay. It's all happening.
What an amazing day.
Let's do a show.
What an amazing day.
Show, you mean? Amazing show.
Yes,
sorry, thank you very much.
What an amazing show.
Beautifully produced by Alicia. Ably assisted by Damien.
Damien is the star.
Amy,
Alicia's the star. Jana. Anyway, she's brilliant as well. No, Finn gets the job, disappears. Do you know what I mean? That's showbiz.
I know, he was there, then he's gone.
Can I just say what I made? You know, all the critics of Donald Trump, he did it. Somebody said to me, still, we could have done it 9 months ago. And I said, Biden could have done it 5 years ago. Extraordinary scenes. And for the Jewish community, got loads of Jewish friends, and they've all just said today is absolutely monumental.
The same deal was on Joe Biden's desk.
Yeah, of course.
Same deal.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump isn't claiming he wrote every bit of the deal. But
do you know what he did?
It needed.
He just said to Netanyahu, "If you're going to do it now, otherwise I'm going to."
That's it. It needed somebody to say that. Biden wouldn't have said that.
You wouldn't be surprised to know that I'm going to base my show entirely on. Have you seen that clip we're sitting here, and we've played a major part in how important. I mean, you know, Starmer, delusional. I mean, delusional.
Has he actually spoken?
Well, he was sitting in a room with a Qatari foreign minister going, I was very happy to be here. My favourite, though, is Boris Johnson, who not 5 minutes ago tweeted, Starmer's help in ceasefire talks was akin to a fart in a gale, which is what Drive Time is going to be about. Did you not see Bridget Phillipson, that dreadful education secretary, yesterday on Trevor Phillips going, we've been instrumental. Have we? Have we really?
No, I tell you what, there was one man that was named by Steve Witkoff, which was Jonathan Powell.
Yes.
Because for years he just knows a bit about that stuff.
Well, I've got a theory about that.
But there was no mention of Starmer.
No, but I've got a theory about that, because if you remember, Mike Huckabee said...
Nonsense.
Rubbish. Yeah. You've been no use. It's almost like Witkoff's come out. He said, I'd like to acknowledge the vital role of the UK in assisting and coordinating events that have led to this historic day in Israel. In particular, I want to recognise the incredible input and tireless efforts of National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell. It's almost like Number 10 found up and went, sorry, could you please just put out that we actually have done something? I mean, no, we haven't, but look, you know, not getting away from the fact.
We'll mention Powell, not Starmer.
Yeah, an extraordinary thing. And I do want to talk about the Chinese... I find it extraordinary. I watched Bridget Phillipson on Sunday as well.
Yeah.
She says that the Chinese spy case fell down because the CPS didn't get it right.
I mean, she's on another planet.
She's on another planet.
He's the former head
of the CPS.
If anyone would know, he'd know.
Oh my God, they're in a mess, aren't they? But yeah, from a Jewish point of view, from a world peace point of view, a historic day. All the cynics are saying, will it last? Well, he got it done, didn't he?
I mean, it is that simple. But it needed, and this is what I keep saying about critics of Trump, even if you're a critic of Trump, it needed, to put it one way, Jeremy, it needed that personality.
Jeremy?
To put it that one way, Mr. Kyle, sorry, I do apologise, I used your first name. Not allowed to do that before. But Jess, it's true, isn't it? It needed that personality to be able to stand up.
Somebody said to me at the weekend, do you not think it's really interesting that the two most successful American presidents in the last 50 years have been a retired movie actor and a realtor? And that's the truth. That is the truth. Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump will probably... Well, what did Obama? I'm being completely serious. They've all found it around. He's got it done. The cynics, understandably, there will be concern, is it going to last? But I think it's a monumental day. And I had a really... I'm going to read this out for you, actually. I had a really lovely message from a Jewish friend of mine.
You can read this?
No, it's really sweet. You're going to feel really bad now.
I'll never feel bad when you're...
Before you go on air, mate, I just wanted to send you a thought. I've spoken to about 6 Jewish friends and my parents today, and every single one of them has been glued to coverage in some way. Every one of us has spent this morning in tears at this exchange finally happening. This is one of the most emotional days as a Jew I can remember. Trump, for all his failings, is a hero right now to the Israelis and will be revered for this deal. It's been hard, yes, really hard to be a Jew over the last few years, and the support of people like you on Talk doesn't go unnoticed, but is accepted and taken with gratitude in a way that many can't fully understand. Thank you. And I thought, yeah, that sums it up, because there are Jewish people who have had a particularly hard time that wouldn't perhaps agree with what's happened in terms of Netanyahu, but have 100%. Had a horrible time.
But, you know, I was talking to Alicia about this, our producer today, who also happens to be Jewish. We were saying, and she was saying, when she talks to friends who say, oh, I love listening to Julia or Mike or us or you or whatever.
Me as an afterthought, yeah.
But one of, and I said to her, one of the reasons is because the kind of stuff we talk about, you don't hear.
No.
On other forms of media. You don't hear that side.
If you look right now, not that I'm encouraging you to, at the BBC's output, they are split screen between what's happening